Hunter x Hunter, start with the prison power. Chapter 81. Zyja and the three of them looked at the surroundings cautiously, but Lean was the only one pushing his bicycle as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. Are these the candidates taking the hunter exam? They all look very strong. Zyja looked around curiously and said. Well, they are all experienced and powerful guys. A few of them gave me a bad feeling. They are obviously difficult characters to deal with. Kurapika also looked a little solemn, and it was obvious that he felt a lot of unfriendly feelings. Leorio on the side also rarely showed a serious expression at this time, holding a box in his hand and alertly guarding against the surrounding situation. The four of them walked to a corner, and it was obvious that Lean's bicycle attracted the attention of everyone present. Many people were wondering what the use of bringing a bicycle to the exam was. Lean, who was familiar with the plot, naturally had his purpose. In this assessment, Leorio would cause a series of troubles due to lack of physical strength, so the moment Lean heard about the bicycle, he bought it with a wave of his hand. On the one hand, I didn't want to carry Leorio who was covered in sweat, and on the other hand, I wanted to pass the first assessment with less effort. Parking the bicycle next to him, Lean looked around at the surroundings, looking for familiar figures based on the memories of his previous life. No. 103, the snake charmer Scarping. The three Amory brothers no. 197 to 199. The chatty ninja Hanzo no. 294. No. 301 Illumi. Unlucky guy no. 191, martial arts master Boudreaux. No. 53, the ultimate unlucky guy Bao Cure. After looking around carefully, Lean finally saw a silver-haired figure in the corner. It was Killua no. 99 who came to take the hunter exam. Looking at Killua's figure, Lean was about to step forward to say hello, but unexpectedly he was blocked by a fat figure. Brother, do you want a drink? With a familiar figure and familiar words, Lean knew without even thinking that this was the Dongba master who had participated in 34 hunter exams and was known as the Rookie Killer no. 16. Before traveling through time, Lean had many guesses about Dongba's identity, and even considered that Dongba was sent by the Hunter Association in order to dissuade some newcomers and reduce the mortality rate in the exam. I even guessed that Dongba was probably a professional hunter, and his chosen direction was to be a test hunter, and he might be super strong. After all, according to conventional routines, the more inconspicuous a funny character is, the more likely he is a hidden master. Just as Lean was about to say something, he saw Toba take out bottle after bottle of drinks from the cloth bag and distribute them to Kurapika and others. I glanced at the expressions of the people around me. Those who basically knew Dongba were all gloating about their misfortune. Hey! Uncle, can you give me a can? I'm a little thirsty after waiting for a long time. The speaker was Killua. To his surprise, Lean came over before he could even say hello. Seeing Dongba hand Killua a bottle, Gon, holding the drink in his hand, reminded, I have a bad feeling about this bottle of drink. Only the drink in Gon's hand was forced by Dongba. Kurapika and Leorio didn't take it at all. Zyja's words made Dongba a little embarrassed, but his shamelessness in deceiving novices for a long time prevented him from making it obvious. It doesn't matter. I have undergone special training. Ordinary poisons have no effect on me. Killua replied casually, opened the drink and drank. After finishing a bottle of drink, Killua looked at the drink in Gon's hand and said, do you drink it? If not, just leave it to me. Gon was hesitant, but Killua immediately grabbed it. Looking at Killua drinking his drink, Lean knew that Killua did this on purpose. Gon's appearance made Killua curious. After all, it was incredible for a child of his age to take the exam. You must know that Killua is a killer who beats the enemy Haka. He has been exposed to strict training since he was a child, and why Gon came here, these all aroused Killua's interest. Just when Reen was about to say something to Killua, a scream came from the venue. Reen followed the sound and saw Hisoka coming out of a corner. There was also an unlucky man whose arms were cut off by Hisoka lying on the ground. Everyone present did not expect that someone would take action at the venue, but when they saw Hisoka's appearance, they were instantly frightened and did not dare to say anything. In the last hunter exam, because Hisoka beat the examiner half to death, there was no one who passed the exam. Many of these people today were witnesses of that test. Hisoka's methods and cruelty left a deep impression on them. It can be said that Hisoka was the last person these people wanted to encounter. He ignored Hisoka who was passing the time, but Lin could also clearly see that the guilt value on Hisoka's head had increased a lot. Lin was also a little confused as to whether it was Hisoka who was raising leaks or he was raising Sasuo. In this short moment, Killua and Gon completely hit each other. Friendship between peers is sometimes so simple. And when Dongba saw Killua drinking a drink and looking like nothing was wrong, he immediately knew that he had encountered a serious problem and had disappeared long ago. Looking at Killua, who reminded Gon to stay away from Hisoka, Rin whispered, "Killua, didn't your father send someone to find you home?" Rin's simple words sounded like a cat with explosive hair in Killua's ears. With a vigilant expression, Killua said solemnly, "Are you sent here by my family?" Rin did not answer Killua's question, but looked in the direction of Illumi. The voice just spoken was not loud, but Lin knew that Illumi, who had been paying attention to Killua, must have heard it. Originally, he just planned to tease Killua, but he didn't want to anger the younger brother because of this incident. He put his hand into his pocket, and when he took it out, there was already a card in his hand. This was given to him by Yi Mi, with Yi Mi's phone number written on it. With a slight exertion on his wrist, in front of everyone's eyes, Lin ejected a card and flew towards Illumi, who was looking in Lin's direction. Kaba! Kaba! Illumi took the card and knew Lin's identity with just a glance. Although he was a little curious, the card given at the beginning was enough to dispel most of his doubts. For Hakka people, there are only 3 kinds of people in the world: family members, self, and enemies. Seeing Illumi turn his head away, Lin knew that Illumi had confirmed his identity and would not suddenly attack him because he contacted Killua without permission. Turning his head, Lin saw Killua with a hairy look. This scene made Lin suddenly want to laugh. Reaching into his pocket, Rin threw a candy towards Killua. It was a special version of Sky Arena's high-end chocolate ball. "Don't be so nervous. I didn't see you when I went to beat up the enemy Hakka, so I just wanted to say hello." Rin smiled softly and looked at Killua, who was holding a chocolate ball with a confused look on his face, and became playful for a moment. Chapter 82. Impossible. The average person in my family is not qualified to enter. Stop talking nonsense. Don't think you can bribe me with a chocolate ball. Killua opened the package and popped the chocolate ball into his mouth, showing an expression of enjoyment. The moment he ate the chocolate ball, Killua, who has tasted sweets for many years, knew that this must be the best among high-end goods. In fact, just as Killua thought, this kind of chocolate ball is a special edition, and the one just now is worth 50 rings. Seeing Killua's expression of enjoyment, Gon was also a little moved and asked, "Lin, do you still have those chocolate balls?" "No, there are 4 left, all for you." Rin took out 4 chocolate balls, and the moment he opened his palms, Killua took away 3 of them at lightning speed. Zyja also took one and tasted it, and said happily, "It's my first time to eat such a delicious chocolate ball." Looking at the 2 people enjoying themselves, Lin explained, "Your eldest brother Yi Mi was seriously injured before, and I came to heal your eldest brother. At that time, I heard that you seemed to have run away from home. By the way, your mother seems to be very proud of you sneak attack on her, and she is not even willing for me to take the initiative to treat his injuries." Hearing this, Killua confirmed that Lin had indeed been to the Kamike family, and said warily, "Are you here to take me back?" Lin replied in a low voice, "Then what should I say?" As soon as the words fell, Killua immediately prepared for a fight and could launch an attack at any time. Puff! Seeing Killua's guarded behavior, Rin couldn't help but laugh. "I'm just kidding. Although your father asked me to be the guest who beats up enemy Hakkas, I have no interest in meddling in your family's affairs, but I still have no problem taking care of you." After telling all his thoughts, Lin finally said hello to the future heir of the enemy Hakka family. "My guest," Killua said in surprise. Killua knows the word Keiching and understands the status of Keiching in the family. However, he has only known about it since Killua was born and has not seen it. After all, in order to become a Hakka who beats the enemy Hakka, in addition to the necessary requirements such as strength and wisdom, the most difficult part is that you must also gain the approval of the contemporary family head. Killua didn't doubt Rin's identity at all. After all, no one dared to use the identity of the enemy family to cheat the enemy family members. Killua couldn't help but become very curious about Rin, and couldn't help but take a second look. "The Hakka you are talking about beating up the enemy is the very famous killer family." Kurapika listened on the sidelines for a long time. He had only heard about beating up the enemy's guest family. He only knew that this killer family was very mysterious. But Kurapika didn't expect that Lin would have such a deep relationship with this killer family. Yes, that is a powerful killer family. Basically, it can be said that they are the strongest per capita. If they take action seriously, it will not be difficult to destroy the phantom troop. Lin explained carefully. I won't bother others to take action. I will avenge the Koluda clan myself. Kurapika knew Lin's good intentions, but he also had his own obsessions, and Lin couldn't say much when he saw this. So, Killua, what is the purpose of taking the hunter exam? Rin asked. Killua held the chocolate ball in his mouth and said with enjoyment, of course I will arrest Dad and the others and put them in jail. Really? Lin secretly thought to himself that he was not surprised at all by this answer. This was something Lin had always wanted to do before he joined in beating up the enemy Haka. When Lin went to beat up enemy Hakas before, the evil value of each person made Lin envious. But Lin couldn't take action, and Siba showed murderous intent to intimidate Lin, which made Lin give up the idea of becoming his enemy. There's no shame in joining if you can't defeat them. What's more, defeating the enemy Haka will definitely bring more benefits to Lin than putting these people in jail. There are many criminals with telekinesis abilities in this world. Anyone who can telepathize is basically guilty. However, Lin also has rules and will not attack the lawful and neutral camps. To put it simply, Rin's prison will not imprison two kinds of people, oneself and those who feel necessary to exist. Hearing Killua's answer, Rin said casually, I will convey your words to your father and elder brother. They will definitely be happy for you. Do not want. Killua was a little anxious. He had made a big mistake in escaping in the first place. If his father and elder brother knew about this, well, it would be scary to think about it. Then tell the truth. Lin asked with a sidelong glance. Killua turned away and muttered in a low voice, I'm just bored. I heard that the hunter exam is very interesting and I came here. Seeing that Killua finally told the truth, Rin secretly laughed and said, should I say that he is indeed a transformation type? By the way, you won't tell my family my whereabouts, right? Killua asked tentatively. Rin knew that Killua hadn't had enough fun and didn't want to go home at all, especially he didn't want to see Ilmi at all, so he immediately promised, I said, I don't care about your family's affairs. You can enjoy the exam. Hearing what Lin said, Killua felt relieved and said to Lin, I didn't expect you to be quite knowledgeable. Do you still have those chocolate balls? Lin raised his brows, crossed his arms, and asked back, you still know it's a high-end product. Why should I save so much since it's a high-end product? Killua was a little disappointed after hearing this. He hated this feeling of enjoying half the confession. However, come to my company when you have time, and I'll treat you to a lot of high-end sweets. Real. Seeing Killua's excited expression, Rin nodded and said, but you have to bring your good friends with you. Otherwise, I won't entertain you. Then Lin pointed in the direction of Zyja and found that Zyja and the others were chatting happily with a little fat man. When Zyja saw Lin pointing at him, he ran to Lin and said, the uncle named Dongba just now, his nickname is Rookie Killer. There must be something wrong with that bottle of drink. Then he looked at Killua and asked, are you uncomfortable in any way? That guy is so bad. Killua shook his head and said, when the guy took out the drink, I knew there was something wrong. Then he showed Gon his intact condition, and Killua said proudly, with my physique, things of that level are completely useless, you can rest assured. Zyja nodded and was about to say something to Lin. Suddenly dip. Dip. Lin's cell phone rang, which made him very confused. After all, there were only a handful of people who could call him. After taking a look at the caller's number, Lin looked at Zyja and then at his phone, with a smirk on his lips. The person who called Lin was none other than Jin Fulasi, whom Lin had been unable to contact. He was also the father Zyja was looking for. Chapter 83. Zyja on the side sensed something strange about Lin, but he just didn't understand what Lin was thinking. Ignoring Zyja, Lin didn't shy away and answered Jin's call. Lin, this time I want to use the opportunity to eliminate Nian. I wonder when you will have time. Jin's voice came, but Lin could clearly hear that Jin's voice was very tired. He must have encountered a difficult matter. He must have just dealt with it and had no time to rest. I'm taking the hunter exam, which may take half a month. Rin replied. Hunter exam? Who would have thought that the Hunter Association's exclusive mind killer is not a professional hunter? This is really... Tisk. Tisk. Faced with Jin's teasing, Lin said with a questioning tone, is it okay after the exam is over? In addition, your son Xiaja also came to take the exam in order to find a certain irresponsible father. Although I didn't ask him about his purpose, I guess he wanted to punch some father he had never met. You said. Beep. Beep. Before Lin could finish speaking, he heard the sound of the phone hanging up. It was obvious that Jin on the other end of the phone was a little nervous. Looking at the hung-up phone, Lin shrugged helplessly. He knew that after the hunter exam was over, Jin would call again. Xiaja on the side naturally heard what Lin said, and naturally associated it with himself. Lin, is it Kim calling? Xiaja looked at Lin very seriously, looking forward to Lin's answer. Seeing Xiaja's expression, Lin nodded and said, yes, but that guy is too shy and refuses to talk to you. It seems you need to find him. Hearing this, Xiaja smiled with interest and said firmly, I will definitely find him. I want to talk to him and know what kind of person he is. Then you have to work hard. After all, this guy Jin is famous for being a dragon that never sees its end. Don't worry. We will definitely find him. The two looked at each other and smiled, and it was obvious that both of them were looking forward to finding Jin. What Xiaja is looking forward to is to understand what kind of person Jin is. Lin was thinking about what Jin would look like when he saw Xiaja after he tipped off the news. I guess this guy Jin's heart is pounding because of nervousness right now. Lin muttered to himself. Suddenly, a bell sounded in the examination room, attracting the attention of all candidates. Lin followed the sound and saw Sats descending from the sky with an alarm. The registration time is over, and now the hunter test officially begins. I am the examiner of the first level, Sats. Sats said as he walked to the front of all the candidates. The candidates present became nervous for a moment when they heard the news that the exam had started. One of Gon and Killua was inexplicably excited, and the other looked interested. As Sats moved, he was also observing the candidates present. Suddenly Sats stopped walking. Sats turned around and looked at Lin, who was pushing the cart and was about to start the assessment, and asked doubtfully, Mr. Lin, are you a candidate? Originally, Sats did not recognize Lin's appearance, but when the bean-faced man applied for Lin's identity document, Sats happened to come to ask about Lin's situation and happened to remember Lin's new information. Looking at Lin's number plate, Sats had no idea that Lin, as the association's exclusive mind killer, did not have a hunter's license. Logically speaking, with Lin's current status, it would be no problem for the association to issue a license directly. Although he was confused that Sats recognized him for the first time, it didn't matter to Lin at all, and it saved him the trouble of explaining the problem. Lin nodded to Sats as a greeting and said calmly, the president strongly requests that I come over to go through the motions. Sats turned his head and walked quickly to the front. He knew that now was not the occasion for communication between the two parties. After all, he was now an examiner. The questions in the first exam are very simple. As long as you keep up with my pace, you will pass the first exam. Sats took the lead and walked at the front, and the candidates behind him immediately followed him when they saw him starting to move. Lin. Hisoka couldn't help but have doubts in his heart while he was moving, trying to put together the current Lin and the images in his mind. Seeing that all the candidates were following, Lin was not in a hurry and followed slowly on his bicycle. Looking at the candidates running in front, Lin estimated in his mind that he had finally gathered the protagonists. I just didn't expect that because of time travel, I and the protagonist group had already established various fates. Although the relationship between Lin and Xiaja's father, Jin Fulasi, was mostly about transactions, they were also close to being both teachers and friends. They are currently in strategic alliance with Killua's Hakka family. Even because of this exam, he basically maintains a pretty good relationship with Killua, the next generation head of the Hakka family. It is completely consistent with Kurapika's goal. Regardless of whether Kurapika will become a chain killer in the future, he and Rin have the goal of cooperation. As for the last Leorio, apart from Gon and Killua, Rin suspected that he was the real son of Destiny. He obviously has a careless image, but in the end he was able to take the place of Metal and become the pig of the 12 earthly branches. It's just that these people are still in the growth stage, and it's unknown what the future will be like, and the strength of the protagonist group and Lin are not in the same dimension. But Lin still enjoyed spending time with a few people. After all, when he was young, he once fantasized about becoming a member of a group of several people and going on an adventure to explore the unknown. As time passed, Sats's pace gradually accelerated, which led to some candidates who were not strong enough to keep up with the pace of the large group and faced elimination. Lin, who followed at the end, naturally became the life-saving straw for these people. With a glimmer of hope, those who were weak used their last remaining strength and began to snatch Lin's bicycle. "Come on! We can get through if we steal his car. Get it first, then distribute it later. Hey, I didn't expect God to favor me so much. Uncle Ben wants this car." Looking at the candidates who were rushing towards them like hyenas, Lin looked slightly cold and released his powerful thoughts, pressing these candidates to the ground. Hateful! How come? Under the intense pressure, it was difficult for the candidates to even speak, and they looked at Lin on the bicycle with fearful expressions. "If you're not strong enough, just leave. If you bother me again, I'll kill you." The words were full of murderous intent. For Lin, not killing these losers was Lin's last mercy. During the ride, more and more people dropped out of the assessment due to lack of physical strength. Every time someone tried to steal the bike, Lin immediately started accelerating so that the snatcher couldn't even touch the hem of his clothes. Those eliminated looked at Lin's retreating figure, and the despair in their eyes became even more intense. As Lin accelerated, the figures of Zijia and others gradually appeared in Lin's sight. At this time, Lioreo had begun to suffer from physical exhaustion. Lin, who was riding closer, saw that in addition to a few members of the protagonist group, the new killer Dongba master was also there. Chapter 84. After thinking about it, Lin knew that Dongba was evil and wanted to use tricks to eliminate Zijia and others. After all, for people like Dongba, eliminating newcomers is the fun of the hunter test, and it is also an excuse for him to escape from failing the test. Originally, Lin was curious about Dongba because this guy was very confusing in the plot, and he was probably a master. But with Lin's current eyesight, it is easy to see from Dongba's walking and running posture that this guy is just an ordinary person with some foundation. The long-term failure of the hunter exam has given this guy a bad taste in trapping novices. But for the goal of becoming a professional hunter, I still happily take the exam every year. If I fail, I will use fun as an excuse to save face. Lin was sure that once he had the chance to become a professional hunter, Dongba would rush forward like a mad dog. Seeing Dongba eloquently persuading Zijia and others to go to the assessment trap, Lin said calmly from behind, "Do you want to die? Newbie killer Dongba." Seeing Lin, Cheng Yaojin, who had come out halfway, Dongba's face became obviously ugly, and he forcefully explained, "I just want to help them." Hee hee. With a sneer, Lin said sarcastically, "In my hometown, there is an old saying, a weasel greeting a rooster in the new year is unkind. This situation is obvious. You are the weasel, Dongba." Although Zijia and others had never heard of what Lin said, they basically understood its meaning. Dongba wanted to forcefully explain, but when he saw everyone's faces, he knew that his plan had failed. He hurriedly turned around and ran in the direction of Sats. "Lien, thank you so much, otherwise we would have been deceived," Zijia said happily. Killua also echoed, "I knew there must be something wrong with that guy. How could a liar be so kind? I just wanted to see what tricks he would use. Yet, I didn't expect that guy to be so bad, damn it. I still underestimated the hunter test. But I won't give up." Lioreo obviously couldn't hold on any longer, and the sweat on his body was soaked through his clothes. Seeing this situation, Lin was very grateful for his foresight, otherwise carrying Lioreo, who was covered in sweat, would have been a bit unacceptable when he thought about it. Karapika on the side asked curiously, "I wonder what is in that direction? The source of this fragrance must not be simple." Seeing that several people were curious about the aroma of chalu, Lin explained, "The aroma over there is a plant. If you inhale too much of this aroma, it will cause hallucinations. So once you fall into hallucination, you will be eliminated from the exam." Several people instantly understood Dongba's sinister intentions, and became even more wary of Dongba. They didn't know what trouble this guy would have in the next assessment. "Okay, it seems I made the right choice by buying this bike. Can Lioreo ride it?" Putting the bicycle aside, Lin got off the car and took a look at Lioreo's condition. After a short delay, Lioreo had obviously recovered some strength. "Thank you." Leo thanked him vigorously, hung the box and suit on the car, and continued the assessment on his bicycle. Seeing that Lioreo had ridden a certain distance, Lin looked at the people on the spot and said, "Let's speed up too. Otherwise, we won't be able to keep up with the large army." Everyone nodded and followed Lin in the direction of Sats. Ryan, what is the purpose of taking the hunter's exam? Is it for the hunter's license? Perhaps because he was bored while running, Killua asked Reen beside him. Obviously, Killua's words attracted everyone's attention, including Leorio, who was riding hard. Looking at the curious eyes around him, Lean thought for a while and replied, the hunter's license is only one of the purposes, and the other is to get payment from an old man. I should meet him in this exam. Is that so? What kind of reward will you get in the exam? Kurapika thought about Lean's words and said involuntarily. You will know about this issue when the time comes. In short, there is no need to hide this kind of thing. Everyone nodded. Lean's character was completely trustworthy in their hearts. Leori, what is your goal? I haven't heard you say it yet. Zyja looked at Leorio riding in front with curious eyes. Money. Of course it's money. As long as you become a hunter, you can have a lot of money. Leorio shouted excitedly. Kurapika completely ignored Leorio's words and said, Leori, lying is not a good sign for your companions. I don't know why. I can feel that Leorio is telling the truth. Zyja pondered for a moment. The feeling Leorio gave him just now didn't have any reaction to lying. Isn't it normal to like money? We killers also perform tasks for money. Everyone was discussing in a flurry, and there was no sense of urgency in pursuing the vanguard. What about you? Lean, those high-end goods must not be cheap. You look like a rich man at first glance. Killua teased. Lean shrugged helplessly and replied, it's okay. Money only has a consumption function for me. But Leorio said he was doing it for money. In my opinion, he was telling the truth. His purpose was really for money. Lean's words aroused Leorio's strong agreement, and he gasped, Lean still understands me and knows that I am not lying. Yes. Yes. Reen nodded repeatedly, making Kurapika feel incredible. Superficial. Kurapika lowered his head and muttered. Seeing that Kurapika seemed to have misunderstood something, Lean changed his voice and said, but, Leorio, it's not a good habit to speak half-talk. What do you mean? Does Leorio have other purposes? Kurapika's words were completely on point, arousing strong curiosity in Gon and the others. Lean, who was running, joked, I think Leorio must be such a superficial person, but there must be some reason. It requires a lot of money to do it. Am I right? Dr. Leorio. What? When Leorio heard Lean's words, he almost fell off his bicycle. Through my observation, Leorio is obviously planning to become a doctor, but unfortunately, studying medicine is very expensive. I estimate that the most expensive thing about Leorio is his suit. Apart from that suit, I guess this guy can't even afford food. Lean's words made Zyja on the side nod repeatedly, and then said, I think Lean is right. When I first met Leorio, he was stealing fish from a fish shop. Chapter 85. Ha! Ha! I was laughing so hard. I didn't expect you, Leorio, to be such a person. It's so interesting. Killua seemed to have heard something interesting and laughed wildly while running. Although Killua's laughter is not very harmful, the deafening sound is extremely insulting. Leorio's face turned dark obviously, and he secretly regretted why he had to steal those fish in the first place. He just wanted to steal the fish, and let Zyja see it in person. How embarrassing! Leorio said shyly in his heart. But why did Leorio become a doctor? Zyja said with a curious tone. Then we have to ask Leorio and see if he is willing to tell the truth. Lean's words attracted everyone's attention, and the whole place fell silent for a moment. Leorio, who was riding in front, felt that everyone behind him was looking at him. Finally, after riding for a few minutes, Leorio obviously couldn't bear this state and shouted, damn it! Sensing Leo's desperate mood, Lean intervened, actually, everyone has secrets, it just depends on whether they are willing to share them. The most important thing is that Leorio is still the Leorio I know. After hearing Lean's words, everyone nodded thoughtfully. Killua said, actually, I don't care, but Leorio's ultimate goal is not money, which surprises me. I didn't expect this uncle to be such a person. Uncle. Damn it, I'm only 19 years old. Leorio's reverse scale was successfully triggered by Killua, but Killua's reaction was really surprised and he said in disbelief, liar. Hearing this, everyone laughed. Indeed, although Leorio does not look like him, he is really only 19 years old. Reen explained while running. Leorio, can't you really say it? Zaija asked. Leorio, who was riding at the front, felt a little blushing and whispered, actually, there is nothing that cannot be said, but you have agreed in advance that you cannot laugh at me. Zaija promised, definitely not. I wouldn't do something so tasteless. Karapika said seriously. Killua and Lean looked at each other and said in unison, I promise. Seeing everyone's promises, Leorio began to recall the scene from a long time ago in his mind, and slowly began to tell. My best friend Pido died of illness a long time ago because we didn't have the money to take him for surgery. Obviously it was just a simple cold at the beginning, but I didn't expect that it would take his life in the end. So from then on I wanted to be a doctor, but unfortunately I had no money and no access to learning channels. I came to take the hunter assessment because after becoming a professional hunter, you can make a lot of money, preferably so much that you won't have to worry about it for the rest of your life. Thinking of this, the scene after getting the hunter's license began to appear in Leorio's mind, and a large number of Junies came towards him. After hearing what Leorio said, Killua commented, I thought it was some interesting ambition, but I didn't expect that it still depends on money. I feel the same, Killua. Leorio is such a bad-natured person. Karapika agreed. Is it really? Zaija was confused, and then looked at Lean. Reen thought for a while and explained, actually, Leorio is a person who is not good at expressing emotions. He is different from you, whether it is goals or expectations for the future. What Leorio just said proves that he grew up at the bottom, and his growth environment made him understand the sorrow of the bottom. After a pause, Lean continued, I think he wants a lot of money, and he probably has the regret of not letting what happened to himself happen to others again. I'm really annoyed. You are so smart, why don't you think about how to pass the exam quickly? Seeing Leo's depleted appearance, everyone knew exactly what Lean was saying. I look at you differently, Leorio, Karapika said. Killua sighed, that's right. I didn't expect that uncle would be such a person. Actually, I've known for a long time that Leorio is a very good person. Zaija said truthfully. Hearing everyone's comments, Leorio covered up, you guys, don't think that if you praise me, I will be merciful in the exam. I don't know why, but I always feel that Leorio is emotionally innocent, and even lying is obvious. Killua joked. Several people present couldn't help but burst out laughing. Suddenly, Lean heard a sound of footsteps and said, we are almost approaching the vanguard. I heard their footsteps. Killua sensed it and echoed, I heard it too, speed up. Several people increased their speed and gradually saw the figure of the leading candidate. In addition to the chaotic footsteps, they also heard heavy breathing. Following the vanguard, several people breathed a sigh of relief, but they didn't know how far away they were, so they kept running at a constant speed to save the remaining energy. Sats, who was leading the way, glanced sideways when he heard someone coming from behind, and then quickened his pace. After marching for another 10 minutes, Sats led everyone out of the passage and stopped. Looking at the more than 40 people in front of him, Sats knew that although the first exam was only halfway through, the number of candidates could already be handed over to the examiners of the second exam. Looking at the candidates who were gasping for breath, Sats introduced, Shimile Wetland, most people call this place the Fraudster's Lair, and it is also the only way to enter the second exam. The creatures here will constantly disguise themselves, and then capture prey and eat it. That's why this place is called the Trickster's Lair. Just when Sats said, please follow my footsteps, before he continued, a man with yellow hair and a serious injury came out with a man-faced ape. The yellow-haired man threw the man-faced ape on the ground, pointed at Sats and said, that guy is a liar, I am the examiner. Sats remained silent. The candidates present looked at this scene and discovered that the human-faced ape on the ground was very similar to Sats. Looking at the surrounding situation, Lean, who was standing behind the crowd, found that the candidates around him were hesitant, and it was obvious that they could not tell whether what the yellow-haired man said was true or false. Finally, some candidates began to question Sats loudly, hoping to obtain certain information from Sats. As a professional hunter, how could Sats answer everything? Moreover, this accidental situation could also be regarded as part of the exam. He chose to look at the candidates in silence. The yellow-haired man on the side is the opposite of Sats. He basically answers all questions, and the answers are surprisingly reasonable. At this point, the balance of reality began to gradually tilt towards the yellow-haired man. Chapter 86. Lin, who was standing behind, watched the situation in front of him with interest. According to the information in the original work, it is obvious that the yellow-haired man is an imposter, and even the human-faced ape pretended to be dead, and was eventually killed by Hisoka using playing cards to disrupt the situation. What Lin didn't expect was that the candidates at the scene became more and more excited and almost attacked the Sats group. Hisoka did not stand up to attack the two of them. I have known for a long time that there is something wrong with this examiner named Sats. How can a human being run so far without even taking a breath? The candidates' words were recognized by most people, and they were ready to kill Sats at any time. Looking at Sats, who was facing public criticism, Lin knew that if these people dared to take action, Sats would beat them until they couldn't even stand up. While the candidates were all hostile to Sats, Rin was looking around for Hisoka. After all, according to the original plot, this farce should have been ended by Hisoka. Looking around, he didn't expect that the two pairs of eyes would actually meet. Hisoka showed an excited smile, and the look on his face gradually became sickly. Seeing this situation, Rin didn't know the reason, but he was certain that there must be something about him that attracted Hisoka's attention. Ignoring Hisoka's burning eyes, Lin focused on the current exam. Since Hisoka won't stop him, then I will. These people are really wasting their time. Rin thought to himself and walked out of the crowd. As soon as Lin walked out of the crowd, the yellow-haired man and the human-faced ape lying on the ground suddenly trembled, as if they had encountered something terrible. Seeing this situation, Lin knew that it was caused by the aura on his body. The specific reason is not very clear to Lin. From the description of the fierce fox, it seems that after killing the monsters, the death aura of those monsters will be attached to the killer. Without any hesitation, the yellow-haired man and the man-faced ape immediately began to escape, but the moment they turned around, a few playing cards took away their lives. The yellow-haired man revealed his prototype, which was a tall human-faced ape. The answer was revealed in an instant, and the candidates around him who believed that Sats was a fake fell into an embarrassing situation. Looking at Hisoka playing cards behind him, Lin knew that Hisoka was getting impatient. Keep up. Next we have to pass through the Shimile wetland and head to the location of the second exam. After Sats finished speaking, he took the lead and entered the wetland. The surrounding candidates saw the examiner start to move and immediately followed him. Leorio handed the handlebar of the bicycle to Lin and thanked him. Lien, thank you for the bicycle. Thanks to the two apes for delaying their time, my strength has been restored. Lin waved his hand, took the bicycle, and warned the protagonist group, be more careful ahead. Since it is called the Trickster's Lair, there must be a reason for it. The protagonist group nodded and ran towards the Shimile wetland. While running, Zyja suddenly turned around and said, Lin, aren't you coming? I want to chat with an old friend. If I don't arrive in time, you tell Sats, and Rin asks him to wait for a while. Rin pointed helplessly with his thumb at Hisoka behind him. Seeing this, Zyja and others no longer hesitated, following Sats's route and running towards the testing location of the second exam. Looking at the disappearing figures of Ganja and others, Lin turned his head and looked at Hisoka, who had a calm expression on his face. Rin told the truth that he also wanted to move forward with Gon and others, but Hisoka's murderous intent had been locked on him ever since he killed the man-faced ape. Thinking that he couldn't get rid of a certain pervert, Rin decided to accept Hisoka's request to meet, and it would be best to solve the problem without fighting. What do you want to say? Mr. Lin. There was a smile on Hisoka's calm face, and he looked more normal than normal. But Lin knew that this guy must be unable to hold back any longer. This was the result of suppressing his own emotions. Spreading his hands, Lin showed a helpless expression and asked, Okay. I don't even need to explain the details, how did you find me? It's very simple, name, look. Hisoka's eyes began to glow red, and his tongue unconsciously licked his lips. That's right. I didn't expect that you would recognize me even after I almost turned into another person. Rin understood why Hisoka recognized him. It was because no matter how much a person changed, his eyes represented the most subtle differences between people. For ordinary people, these details would not be observed, but for Hisoka, the observation direction of many things cannot be concluded based on the surface alone. Since I lost to you last time, I want to fight you again every day and every night. You said you would come to take the hunter exam, but you didn't expect that you would show up with a completely new look. It seems that you must have experienced very interesting things during the time we were apart. Hisoka's body was shaking a little, and the bloodthirsty look in his eyes was even worse. Seeing Hisoka's appearance, Lin knew that she would soon be unable to suppress the excitement in her heart and would take action the next second. Sure enough, Lin was right as he expected, but within a second, several playing cards came towards him with a strong sound of breaking wind. Bang! Bang! Several bullets flew out of Lin's hand, shattering the playing cards flying in the air. Hisoka, have you forgotten our agreement? Lin's voice was slightly cold, hoping to avoid this meaningless battle through the original agreement. Facing the current Hisoka, Lin didn't want to fight him, although the crime value on Hisoka's head made him very greedy. The reason why Rin didn't want to fight was not because he was afraid of not being able to defeat Hisoka. But Hisoka is very useful to the current Lin, and even the implementation of some plans requires Hisoka's help. At first, Hisoka owed Lin a favor, and Lin had already thought of how to use it. Now that Hisoka was interested, Lin was quite helpless. Promise. That kind of thing, just think that I owe you another favor. Let's fight. Lin. Facing Lin's words, Hisoka finally stopped suppressing it, and all the boring feelings before were replaced by the current passion. WC, Hisoka, you are such a bastard. Seeing Hisoka rushing toward him with a perverted expression of excitement on his face, Lin swore and rushed forward. Bang! Bang! In an instant, a huge sound of fighting came from the Shimile wetland. Sats heard the sound and turned around while running, thinking to himself, did you do this? Mr. Lin. The protagonist group traveling through the Shimile wetland also discovered anomalies. Seeing Gon's somewhat depressed expression, Kurapika comforted him, don't worry, Gon. You know Rin's strength, so you can rest assured. Yes. Zyja, that guy is my guest, and that's not something ordinary people can do. Killua agreed. Your guest. Chapter 87. Under everyone's confused eyes, Killua told everyone about beating up the enemy Haka guest minister. The general meaning of Killua's description is that the Haka who beats the enemy Haka is called very awesome, especially awesome. However, due to the lack of understanding of the protagonist group about beating up the enemy Haka family, their understanding can only stay at the level of being awesome. After a simple understanding, the protagonist group went smoothly because they were not blocked by Hisoka like in the original work. On the other side, Lin was still in a stalemate with Hisoka, and the two sides started a chase while moving towards the center of the Shimile wetland. The destruction caused by the aftermath of the battle disturbed countless wetland creatures. During the battle between the two, these cunning creatures all hid. Bang! Bang! Hisoka's playing card pierced directly into the trunk of the tree where Rin had just settled. Seeing that Hisoka was ruthless, Lin knew that he had to show some real skills, otherwise this pervert would never end. After all, most people's abnormality is psychological, but Hisoka's is physical. In order to pursue physical pleasure, he can give up his life, or exchange his life for that intoxicating feeling. In Lin's opinion, this is like turning himself into a firework, and the brilliance that blooms in the end must be the ultimate pleasure that Hisoka pursues. Having made up his mind, Lin was a little angry after being chased for a long time, so he decided to treat Hisoka with his fists first. Without any hesitation, Rin stood on a tree trunk, stopped moving, and turned to look at Hisoka who was jumping behind him. Why don't you run away? This look. It seems that you are ready to take it seriously. This is really exciting. Holding a few playing cards in his hand, the red light in Hisoka's eyes became brighter and the murderous aura in his body became heavier. Two things. Rin held out 2 fingers and said solemnly. First thing, you owe me 2 favors. You can't refuse my request. After saying that, Lin withdrew 1 finger and continued, the second thing, please call me Drive. Lin, because I will help you treat your illness. Cure. Just when Hisoka was puzzled, Rin's figure suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already on top of Hisoka's head. I'm here to help you treat your illness. Rin landed a punch, aiming for Hisoka's face. Hisoka was a little surprised by the sudden attack, and instinctively moved his head, barely dodging the punch. Boom! The upper part of the big tree was directly interrupted by Lin. When the blow failed, Lin completely exploded his energy, wrapped his fist with powerful thought energy, and attacked Hisoka. Seeing Lin start to fight head-on, Hisoka's eyes showed an evil smile, the energy in his body exploded, and he faced him with all his strength. Bang! Bang! As the two of them fought with all their strength, Lin felt that his growth during this period was really too great. Whether it is speed, strength, or control of thoughts, they have all been greatly improved, and he can even fight Hisoka with ease. Hisoka on the side also had a general understanding of Rin's strength. He didn't expect that Rin would grow to this extent in less than a year. Strong pleasure surged in Hisoka's heart. After the two of them exchanged blows and separated, Hisoka shouted loudly, "This is the feeling, the joy of punching to the flesh, the fight of equal strength, the excitement between life and death. Lien, you are worthy of being the man I like. Now let us use our true strength." Seeing Hisoka like this, Lien knew that Hisoka had completely let himself go. He was thinking about whether he should go all out to give this guy a facial plastic surgery. Before he could make a decision, Hisoka had already rushed towards Lien again. Lien frowned and shouted angrily, "Tell me, call me drive. Lien. You bastard has no awareness of being a patient." The battle resumed, and this time Hisoka began to use his telekinesis ability. His flexible love was almost used to the extreme in Hisoka's hands. The branches of a big tree were stuck to Hisoka's thoughts, and were used as weapons to sweep towards Lien. Seeing that Hisoka was getting serious, Lien didn't want to hide his clumsiness, so he summoned Tang Dao Wusheng and held it in his hand. Seeing the Wuji in Lien's hand, Hisoka's eyes flashed with light. The unknown that appeared in a qualified opponent was no less than a surprise box for him. SHH. The long knife flashed past and brought up a ray of white light, wrapped in Wusheng's thought energy, directly cutting off Hisoka's thoughts. At this point, Hisoka lost control of the tree trunk. On the other side, Sats had arrived at the second-level examination venue and looked at the candidates behind him, as if he was waiting for something. Suddenly, Zyja stood up and said, "Examiner Sats, Lien asked you to wait for him, he will be here soon." Sats nodded. Although he was not going to interfere with Lien's battle, he would still be merciful when things were within reason. Hey! Hey! You, the examiner, are too unqualified. Those two people should be disqualified before they arrive. The examinee's words made all the examinees present seem to realize something, and they all agreed. Yes. Yes. We are taking a test, and it is their business for them to fight. Yes, that's right, this guy should be eliminated. Looking at the excited candidates, Kurapika knew clearly that Rin and Hisoka put too much pressure on everyone present. If the examiner determines that the two people have lost their qualifications to take the exam, it will basically be great news for all candidates. Kurapika, who was thinking about countermeasures, thought to himself, "So as the examiner of this exam, how would you respond?" Mr. Sats. Facing such a situation, Sats remained expressionless and said calmly, "When they come here, I will ask for everyone's opinions. I think they will humbly accept the fact that the test failed." Obviously, Sats's words left the choice to the candidates, but facing two super strong candidates, whether they have the courage by then is not a matter for Sats to consider. "Actually, I think it's not bad to wait. After all, I need to take a rest after running for so long." The examinees' words also aroused everyone's approval, and some of them were the ones who had just made the most fun. Although there is harmony on the surface, most of the candidates are secretly cursing, "How many lives will it take to talk to those two perverts about this kind of thing?" At this point, the farce ended completely. Sats looked in the direction of the wetland and stood silently. "Sats, are everyone here?" Menkai and Bokhara in the examination room had already heard the sound outside just now, but they didn't understand why Sats didn't come to take over the handover yet, so they came out to take a look. "Ah! It's Ms. Menkai and Mr. Bokhara." Sats greeted. Sats explained, "It's like this. Two candidates started fighting, and they can't hand over until they finish fighting." Chapter 88. After listening to Sats's explanation, Menkai nodded and said indifferently, "So that's it, then just wait. I'm not in a hurry anyway." "But Menkai, I'm so hungry." Boera's voice came out at an inappropriate time. Menkai comforted, "It's better to wait a little longer. After all, there are no candidates to be handed over. We can only wait now." Boera touched his belly and said helplessly, "Okay." On the other side, Hisoka laughed excitedly as he watched the thoughts formed by flexible love being easily cut off by Lien. "I didn't expect it to cut off my Nian easily. Is this a surprise created for me? A Nian ability specifically created for me?" With a wild smile, Hisoka's aura became deeper and deeper, as if it was like a volcano about to erupt. Seeing Hisoka like this, Lin knew very well that it was not as simple as cutting off the flexible love just now. Originally, Lin just had the mentality of giving it a try, focusing his strengthening thoughts on Wu forgiveness, and forcibly destroying Hisoka's thoughts. This kind of destruction tends to use the suppression of thoughts. Just like chewing gum and rubber, no matter how strong they will be cut off by a stronger weapon, but this weapon was replaced by Lin's mind. You're overthinking, Hisoka. After replying lightly, Lin became even more wary of Hisoka. After all, Hisoka can even use things like reading after death. Who knows if this guy has other methods? Just as Hisoka was about to attack again, several telepathy needles were stabbed at Hisoka. The telepathy needles were easily dodged by Hisoka. It was obvious that these telepathy needles were not shot to hit Hisoka. Seeing the needle stuck in the tree trunk, Lin knew that it was Ilmi who came to disrupt the situation, but he didn't know what the other party's purpose was. The two of them turned around and saw Yimi standing not far away with a pained expression, holding a few needles in his hand. What do you mean? Yimi. With doubts and confusion, Hisoka asked Yimi. Kaba. Kaba. Amidst a strange sound, Yimi pulled out the needle on his head. In an instant, a large amount of long hair came out, and Yimi's face began to shrink and return to its original posture. Yimi looked at Hisoka expressionlessly and said calmly, "The exam is still going on, now is not the time for a fight." Seeing Ilmi appearing like this, Lin guessed that Ilmi was afraid that both he and Hisoka would be injured in the fight. One is Yimi's trading friend, and the other is a guest in the family. Yimi probably doesn't want to see this happen. Rin put away Wu forgiveness and said to Sasuo, "Leave our battle for next time. Don't forget that you owe me 2 favors." After saying that, before Hisoka could react, Rin left the place quickly. Ilmi. Hisoka looked at Yimi with an increasingly dangerous look, as if he would launch an attack in the next second. Seeing Hisoka, who was exuding a dangerous aura, Yimi said calmly, "Don't forget the purpose of taking the hunter exam. We can fight at any time." After Yimi finished speaking, he left here, and Hisoka had no intention of stopping him. Watching Ilmi leave, Hisoka began to secretly look forward to the next battle with Lin. After all, there was not much time left before the original agreement. Hisoka smiled expectantly and said, "Just think of it as an appetizer before the official duel." Dr. Lin. Lin rushed to the location of the second examination. After leaving, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He did not expect that Yimi would intervene in the battle between the two. This battle did not show much strength for Rin. He believed that Hisoka also retained certain methods. The next battle with Hisoka would definitely not be like today. However, fighting Hisoka is also beneficial. Rin has a new understanding of his current strength. For an opponent of Hisoka's level, Rin currently has no problem killing the opponent in a one-on-one situation. In a one-on-two situation with all your strength, there is a 50% chance of a tragic victory. As for the remaining 50%, if the option of escape is eliminated, they will of course die together. Secretly analyzing his current situation, Lin is getting closer and closer to the destination of the second test. When Lin and others rushed to the location of the second exam, in the sky some distance away from Saba City, an airship was rushing to the Shimile wetland. The Hunter Association's logo is marked around the airboat, and it is obviously the Hunter Association's special airboat. In the airship, Netaro, the president of the Hunter Association, took a sip from his teacup and asked the secretary Beanman beside him, "How long will it take to get to the location of the second test?" "It will take about 4 hours, President," the bean-faced man said while brewing new tea. Netaro nodded and drank the tea in his hand. "I wonder what was going on in his head? President, is it because of Mr. Lin that you made a special trip to preside over the Hunter exam this time?" The bean-faced man was a little confused and began to confirm Netaro's thoughts through small talk. "Of course, after all, I still owe that young man a lot. And you have to see for yourself what kind of person he is. After all, his abilities are really important to the association." Although Netaro spoke very casually and didn't say much, Beanman felt that the president's idea would definitely not be so simple. The bean-faced man was very sensible and did not continue the conversation, nor did he ask Netaro's true thoughts, and began to make the tea in his hand seriously. At this time, Lin was rushing to the location of the second exam, and he began to secretly look forward to it. He didn't know if it would be the same as the original work. The examiners for the second exam were Menkai and Bokhara. Not far behind Lin, Ilmi had returned to his miserable state and rushed towards the examination room with Hisoka. It's just different from the anger he felt after being interrupted by Ilmi before. At this time, Hisoka had an intoxicated look on his face, as if he was recalling the battle just now. Soon after, Lin was the first to arrive at the gathering place for candidates and nodded to Sats. Cough. Cough. Sats cleared his throat and asked, "Who else has any opinions? I will consider them based on the actual situation." After Sats's words fell, the scene became very quiet for a moment. Just when Lin began to wonder, Hisoka and Illumi from behind also rushed over. Sats glanced around at the candidates and announced, "I declare that everyone present has passed the first level of the test." As Sats's words fell, Menkai's voice came from the warehouse, "It's finally over, it's our turn to appear in Bokhara." "Okay. Menkai, I've been so hungry for a long time," Boera said while sucking saliva. Chapter 89. Hearing Menkai's voice, Lin knew clearly that the examiner of the second exam was undoubtedly Menkai. Menkai and Boera walked out of the warehouse and introduced, "I am the examiner of the second level, Food Hunter Menkai, and this person next to me is Food Hunter Boera." After saying that, Menkai's beautiful eyes slowly scanned the candidates around her, and suddenly she saw a familiar smiling face. "Lin!" Menkai yelled in surprise, then ran over and fell on Lin under everyone's doubtful eyes. With her warm, fragrant and soft body hanging on her body, Lin held Menchi in his arms under the incredulous gazes of all the candidates. "Really, why didn't you say something when you came to take the hunter exam?" Menkai's voice was slightly reproachful, but clearly filled with joy. Lin replied in Menkai's ear, "Because I want to give you a surprise." "How about it? Unexpected or not?" "Asshole. But there are still surprises." Cough. Cough. Sats's slight cough interrupted their conversation, and it took them a moment to remember that they were surrounded by candidates. Menkai's face turned slightly red, obviously showing shyness. "Ahem." In response to the looks from around him, Lin coughed and said, "Hurry up and preside over the exam. Everyone, please note that this exam is divided into two parts. The first part is set by Boera. You need to meet his requirements. Leave it to you, Bokhara." After Menkai finished speaking, all the candidates' eyes were focused on Boera. As for Sats, the examiner in the first session, he hid somewhere after the handover. Boera touched his stomach and said, "I'm very hungry now and want to eat a roasted whole pig. You can cook as much as you like before I'm full." The candidates present looked at each other in confusion, and one of them said, "The forest is so big, where can we find a roast pig for you?" "No. I smelled the scent of wild boars near here, so there must be wild boars nearby," Zaija retorted. "Damn it! How could anyone take the hunter exam, and the test question is actually about cooking?" Some candidates who had never cooked before began to complain. "Just a reminder, this forest contains my favorite food, the porcupine pig. They are very ferocious, so everyone must be careful." Bokhara drooled, as if he began to miss the taste of the wild pig in his mind. Seeing that Bokhara had given such an obvious reminder, all the candidates immediately scattered away, looking for traces of the porcupine boar. After waving to Menkai, Lin also began to look for traces of the wild boar. Although based on his understanding of the original work, Lin knew that Bokhara was the type who could eat but was not picky about food. But as Menkai's best friend, Lin had to show off his skills at times like this. After a while, the candidates' shouts came from around him. Lin followed the sound and found traces of the wild boar. Facing the galloping giant-nosed wild boar, Lin appeared directly on the route where the wild-nosed wild boar was running. Lin glanced at the wild boar running towards him, and then disappeared in a flash. In the blink of an eye, a wild boar with a big nose was knocked unconscious by Lin. Ignoring the panic of the candidates around him, Lin lifted up the wild boar and prepared to find a place to cook it properly. Lifting the harpoon above his head, Lin found a large scented tree nearby. He cut a hole in the tree, and green sap flowed out of the wound. Lin dipped his hand into the juice, put it to his mouth and took a sip. A sweet fragrance appeared between his lips and teeth. Looking at the special big tree in front of him and nodding, Lin was quite satisfied with the quality of this big tree. Wu Shang appeared in his hand, countless swords were swung out from Lin's hand, and within a moment, the inside of the tree was hollowed out. After finishing processing the wild boar, Lin buried the internal organs and other unnecessary things on the spot, made countless cuts on its body, and then took out a glass jar from the storage room. Inside the glass jar is the honey from snowflake bees that Lin collected when he went to Tommy's forest. Pour out a little bit of the snowflake nectar and apply it evenly on the porcupine boar. Then crush some spices and attach them to the snowflake nectar. The preliminary work is basically completed. Reen took out a long and thick barbecue stick from the storage room, fixed the rabbit in place, and passed it directly through the tree. He picked up some dry firewood from around and lit it inside the tree. Reen chopped the hollowed out part of the tree into pieces, placed it over the flame, and started the baking project. When he smelled the aroma of the wood pieces inside the big tree, dried and burned by the flames, Lean knew that the dish was half done. When Lean was almost halfway through making it, the candidates around him had already prepared the roasted whole pig and sent it to Bokhara. Looking at the slightly burnt roasted whole pig in front of him, Bokhara accepted everyone who came and swallowed the roasted pig in a few bites, giving him a qualified evaluation. Seeing that the dishes of this level could pass the test, the surrounding candidates began to bake faster. After all, it may not be difficult for candidates to pass the test. If Bokhara cannot eat, they will face the risk of failing the exam. Unfortunately, these candidates completely underestimated Bokhara's appetite. As roasted whole pigs were brought to them one after another, everyone who came to Bokhara ate them all. They 100th head, what kind of monster is this guy? This is really something humans can do. That's close to a ton of food. Even if the internal organs and fur are removed, it still weighs half a ton. Taking out the last bone from his mouth, Bokhara happily gave a qualified evaluation. Suddenly, a very attractive fragrance came from the depths of the forest, and the candidates present smelled the fragrance in the air. Zyja, it smells so good. Is someone cooking? Kilua's voice came, disturbing Gon, who was a little drunk at the side. It smells really good. Kilua. Zyja's sense of smell surpassed everyone present, so he felt the fragrance more deeply. Yet, I really want to have a taste. Kilua was obsessed with smelling the fragrance in the air, especially the sweetness it brought. Suddenly, there was a shaking feeling on the ground. Kilua looked back and saw Bokhara with a ferocious look on his face and a hint of madness in his intoxicated eyes, running towards the direction of the scent. The candidates present were stunned by the speed at which Bokhara moved. They did not expect that such a fertile body could burst out at such a fast speed. The weight of his body even caused the ground to vibrate. Zyja, let's follow up and take a look. Kilua became interested and pulled Gon beside him, and the two of them chased in the direction of Bokhara. When some candidates saw this situation, they also ran over with the mentality of watching the fun. Menkai, who was originally sitting next to Bokhara, felt that Lean must be doing something the moment he smelled the fragrance. Before Bokhara could move, he had already rushed in the direction of the fragrance. Chapter 90. A flame ignited in the hollow interior of the big tree, and a thick-nosed wild boar above the flame was penetrated by a long and thick barbecue stick. And Lean was meticulously rotating the wild boar according to the degree of firing. Hearing the footsteps behind him, Lean turned around and saw Menkai's figure. As expected, it's you. The aroma of roasted pig can be smelled in the examination room. The moment Menkai saw Lean, she knew that her guess was correct. It was indeed the aroma coming from Lean's cooking. Regarding Menkai's words, Lean seemed to understand something, and said clearly, I have been taking exams here. It seems that my sense of smell was temporarily paralyzed because of the excessive fragrance. Before Lean could continue, the vibration caused by Bokhara's running reached Lean. With a helpless smile, Lean said to Menkai, it seems that the impact I have caused is quite big. Bokhara even came here. Menkai turned his head and glanced in the direction of Bokhara, and said willfully, I don't care, I want to eat first. No problem, but it's not done yet. You have to stop Bokhara. Seeing him running over, I'm afraid he will lose his mind. Lean glanced at Bokhara, who was running over, and continued to bake without saying a word. Bokhara ran closer, saliva continued to secrete from his mouth, soaking his vest as he ran. Are you still baking? Is it ready? I want to eat it now. Bokhara was a little impatient, and his huge appetite gradually made him unable to control his body. When Menkai saw this situation, of course he knew that Bokhara could no longer hold on any longer, so he hurriedly said, wait a minute, Bokhara, you don't want to eat a half-finished product, right? After hearing Menkai's words, Bokhara's mood immediately dropped. Although Bokhara has an extremely strong appetite, as a food hunter, his professional ethics are still very strong, especially his respect for food and his persistence in treating food. Bokhara was a little impatient and kept stamping his feet, saying anxiously, Menkai, are you still okay? I can't bear it any longer. Wait a minute, hurry up, it'll be fine soon. Menkai's eyes did not stay on the roasted whole pig in the tree like Bokhara, but on the Lean who was making it on the side. Seeing Lean working seriously, Menkai was stunned for a moment. She didn't wake up until the candidates from behind rushed over because of the messy sounds. Sure enough, the source of the fragrance is here in Lean. Zyja said excitedly. Killua looked at the golden roasted whole pig inside, swallowed his saliva and said, I wonder if I can let Reen take some of it out. No, although I also want to eat it, this is Lean's test item. What a pity. Karapika's tone was a little low, but the saliva he kept swallowing as he spoke also showed that he also wanted to taste it. Don't worry about this, just ask Lean to take another exam later. We are also very good friends anyway. Leorio's saliva was almost dripping on the ground, and his eyes were filled with golden roasted whole pigs. This scene made Karapika frown. How shameless, Leorio! Karapika complained. Killua said with a proud tone, it doesn't matter to me. After all, Reen is my guest. Please ask me someday. This kind of thing can be easily handled. Ah! I don't know why, but I suddenly envy this kind of young master from a wealthy family. Leorio said with a tone of reluctance. Suddenly, Killua seemed to have thought of something and said to Gon, Lean said that we should go to his company when we have time, and he will treat us with many high-end snacks. Zyja replied excitedly, really? A snack like that chocolate? Yes, I will definitely enjoy it then. As expected. Reen is a very good person. As the two teenagers talked, they were already imagining the feeling of eating high-end snacks in their minds. Hisoka, who was standing at the back of the crowd, looked at Lean who was attentive, with a smile on his lips. He didn't know what he was thinking in his mind. Standing next to Hisoka, Illumi looked in the direction of Lean and kept making kaba. Kaba. Sounds from his mouth. All right. With a secret thought in his mind, Lean swung the barbecue stick with both arms, and the powerful force directly broke the already hollow tree in half. In the eyes of everyone, a roasted whole pig that was golden in color, dripping with amber grease, and exuding an alluring aroma appeared in Lean's hand. Seeing such tempting delicacies, everyone present couldn't help but swallow the saliva secreted from their mouths. Bokhara beside Menkai could no longer bear it any longer and pounced on the golden roasted pig. Seeing Bokhara pounce directly, Lean wrapped his arm with his thoughts, directly removed the thigh of the roasted whole pig, and threw the roasted whole pig and the barbecue stick directly towards Bokhara. At this time, Boera made a reaction that was completely unreasonable for his fat body. Boera, who jumped into the air, took the barbecue stick directly in his hand, opened his mouth and bit into it. Crack! A crisp voice appeared. This voice not only appeared in Boera's mouth, but also appeared in the hearts of everyone present. Bokhara devoured the food, while Lean on the side walked to Menkai with a pig leg dripping with grease. Menkai summoned his mental tool, and a kitchen knife came out of thin air. For candidates who are not familiar with Nian, this is just a magic trick and they don't pay too much attention to it. There was a flash of knife light, and a piece of roast pork hung on Menkai's kitchen knife. Putting the cut roast meat to Lean's mouth, Menkai motioned for Lean to eat first. He put the piece of meat hanging on the knife into his mouth. Suddenly, the huge fat mixed with the sediment of the trees, and the aroma of snowflake honey poured into Lean's mouth. Lean showed an expression of enjoyment. Menkai was also suppressing his appetite. Seeing Lean's expression, he immediately cut out a piece and started enjoying it himself. Everyone looked at this scene and didn't know why. Although their taste buds had no appetite, their stomachs began to feel hungry. Menkai ate a big piece and looked at the candidates around him with eyes wide open, wishing that he was the one eating it. Reen also saw the situation in front of him and waved to Killua and others. Killua ran over as soon as he saw this and said to Reen, I knew you would never forget us. Listening to Killua's words, Lean signaled Menkai to distribute the barbecue to Killua and others very quickly. Several people in the protagonist group got the pieces of meat one after another, and their throats trembled as they looked at the golden roasted meat. The moment they took a bite, there were no thoughts in their minds. They seemed to have entered a world full of aroma and were immersed in it while chewing. At this time, Lean took the last 2 pieces of meat and walked to Hisoka and Illumi. Chapter 91. Seeing Lean gradually approaching with the barbecue, Hisoka and Illumi were obviously surprised. The two of them smelled the aroma of roasted whole pig before and wanted to taste this dish, but their own self-control made them suppress their desires. Especially Illumi, who has received corresponding training himself, no matter how much desire the fragrance of cooking arouses in him, it will be perfectly suppressed. Lin estimated that the only thing that could make Ilmi lose his cool was when his younger brother's control attribute exploded. Lin walked closer with the barbecue and asked, "You too, do you want a piece?" Hisoka said with a mysterious smile, "I didn't expect you to think of me. I'm so happy." Kaba. Kaba. After all, we got to know each other, and there may be opportunities for cooperation in the future. If there are good things, I won't miss you. It's just Hisoka, I hope you won't disturb my exam, otherwise I will choose to violate our agreement. Lin said it very casually, but his tone was very threatening. Fortunately for Illumi, the purpose of this trip was for the hunter's license. Killua was a complete surprise to him and had nothing to do with him. Hisoka on the side was completely different. To Lin, this guy was like a time bomb. He might do something that would give him a headache on a whim. So Lin decided to take this opportunity to share the barbecue, so the two of them could speak clearly. Kaba. Kaba. Illumi took a piece of barbecue from Lin's hand and walked to the side to enjoy it alone, completely ignoring Hisoka beside him. Eating the delicious barbecue, Yimi knew that this was Lin's thank you gift. After all, Yimi was not cheap. Hisoka looked at Lin indifferently, and did not go to get the piece of meat, but asked, "Next time we fight, you will fight with all your strength, right?" "Of course, your Hisoka's favor is not cheap after all." Rin responded. With an expectant smile, Hisoka took the piece of meat from Lin's hand, took a delicious bite, and said with an expression of enjoyment, "It's really exciting." Seeing this scene, Lin got goosebumps all over his body. Lin was very aware of Hisoka's current state, which was a feeling of physical and physical intertwining. Physiologically because of the expectation, and physically because of the delicious food. Lin could understand this feeling, but he couldn't feel it, and he didn't want to feel it. Just thinking about it would give him a chill. The candidates who were not given barbecue by Lin felt inexplicably disappointed when they saw such tempting barbecue being distributed, knowing that it had nothing to do with them. Bokara on the side had already finished the whole roasted pig with one leg missing, and was licking the barbecue stick with an expression of fascination. Lin walked up to Bokara and reminded, "Examiner, can you announce the result?" Looking at Lin in front of him, Bokara had a strong appetite in his eyes and said reluctantly, "It's not enough to eat at all. No matter how much you eat this kind of roasted whole pig, it won't be enough." After hearing what Bokara said, Lin thought for a moment and said, "I will give the method to Menkai. Then you can ask her for it." "Really? Real?" After hearing Lin's confirmed reply, Bokara stood up and said excitedly, "You passed my exam, you passed." With the announcement of the results, 101 candidates who passed the first half of the second exam successfully entered the second half. Menkai stood up at the right time and said loudly, "All candidates, please follow me. We will conduct the second half of the exam." Everyone followed Menkai's footsteps and walked into the warehouse. As Lin knew, the warehouse had already been transformed into a cooking place. Looking at Menkai sitting on the sofa, Lin wondered whether Menkai would ask the same test questions as in the original book because of his appearance. Menkai was sitting on the sofa, and the eyes of the examinees present were also focused here, hoping that the examiner in front of them would come up with a simpler test question. "I thought about it, my exam question is..." Under the solemn gazes of everyone, Menchi revealed the test questions. "To make a dish that satisfies me, the ingredients can be found in the wetlands. As for the condiments, they are basically available in the examination room. You can use them as you like. There is no time limit until I am full. Now the second half of the second exam begins." As Menkai finished speaking, many dissatisfied voices appeared on the field. "Damn it! It's cooking again. When did the hunter exam turn into a cooking competition? Damn cooking, why can't there be some normal test questions?" Karapika lowered his head and said, "Cooking? It seems that it has to be unique. This examiner is obviously different from the previous one. Zyja, can you cook?" Killua asked. Zyja thought for a while and then replied, "Yes, Aunt Mit said the omelette rice I made is delicious." "Omelette rice? Well, it's really delicious, so I decided to make omurice rice." Under the doubtful eyes of several people, Zyja made a decision immediately. Lin, who was on the side, also heard the conversation between several people and said curiously, "Zyja's omelette rice. I want to try it too." "No problem, just think of it as a reward for the barbecue just now." Zyja said confidently. Oh. I'll just wait and see. Lin raised his eyebrows, obviously very curious about what Zyja's omelette rice tasted like. In a blink of an eye, Lin looked at Leorio and found that this guy had a sinister smile. Leorio, you guys aren't thinking about anything obscene, are you? Rin said with a curious tone. Killua also echoed, looking at him, this is probably what he looks like. Leorio was obviously aroused by the two people's words, and said angrily, is this the kind of person I am in your eyes? Nod. Damn it, you guys underestimate me so much. Leorio said angrily. Killua teased, but your smile just now was so vulgar. You guys underestimate me too much. I have lived alone since I was a child. I also worked in a restaurant for a period of time. Cooking is quite simple. Leorio smiled instead of being angry, with a proud look on his face. Seeing Leorio's confident look, Lin knew in his heart that it wasn't Leorio who overestimated his own strength, but that he overestimated Menkai's taste. Lin can be sure that according to the judgment of cooking skills, every one of the people present is basically impossible to succeed except Lin. Kurapika reminded, I guess in this exam, not only does the food have to be delicious, but it also has to be fast. Looking at the examiner's figure, you know that he will definitely not be the same as the examiner who came on stage. Everyone nodded after hearing this and scattered to look for ingredients for cooking. Chapter 92. Lin and Menkai looked at each other, and when they saw the excited and expectant look in Menkai's eyes, they knew that this was a test question specifically given to him by Menkai. In the original work, the ninja Hanzo leaked the sushi recipe, causing Menkai to arbitrarily judge all candidates as unqualified. Unexpectedly, because of his appearance, Menkai did not choose the sushi test question, but instead improvised a new method. In Lin's opinion, it was probably the wild boar that Lin made for Bokhara that stimulated Menkai. Lin can roughly predict the final outcome of this matter. In the best-case scenario, only Lin is qualified. As for whether this incident would attract Netero to come, Lin said that it would be great if Netero could come. At this time, Lin didn't know that Netero was on his way, but this time his purpose was completely different from the original work. Menkai blinked at Lin, the look of anticipation in his eyes was very obvious, which made Lin couldn't help but reveal a wry smile. I thought to myself, if it arouses excitement among the crowd, at worst, they will all be knocked unconscious. Thinking of this, Lin turned around and walked towards the wetland without hesitation. Menkai. You have to share some of Lin's cooking with me later. The roasted whole pig just now is really delicious. Bokhara's eyes were full of expectation, and his huge palms kept wiping the saliva that was about to drip. Okay. But only a little bit. Menkai, who was sitting on the sofa, shook his legs and began to look forward to what kind of surprise Lin would bring to him. After walking around the wetland, Lin saw the candidates catching various ingredients, but he knew very well that their skills were just useless work. After thinking about it in his mind, Lin decided to search for ingredients deep in the wetlands, and then make a corresponding dish based on the types of ingredients. As Lin continued to go deeper, he also fully realized why this place was called the lair of fraudsters. The grade of ingredients here is not high, the highest is just B-grade ingredients. It's just the growth environment of organisms that makes them instinctively choose to hide themselves and launch sneak attacks in secret. Along the way, Lin encountered sneak attacks from many creatures. However, the huge gap in strength between the two sides meant that these creatures only lost their lives in vain. Looking at the venomous snake that was still twisting after being cut into two pieces by him, Lin looked at the ground and frowned slightly. A swamp. The place where Rin is currently is a swamp, which is more dangerous than the previous forest, and there are endless creatures that attack him. Although there were many sneak attack creatures, they were all ingredients that Lin didn't like. Even during the search process, Lin activated the circle to conduct area reconnaissance. This shape seems to be that of a turtle. After sensing the information about a prey, Lin followed the direction he sensed and explored all the way. This is. In Lin's eyes, a turtle shell covered with mud and only a little reflective appeared in the mire of the swamp. According to Lin's perception, this turtle is about 70 centimeters, but it's just difficult to get in the mire of the swamp. Round. Expanding the circle field again, in Lin's perception, there is no danger around the turtle, but this turtle is obviously disguised to capture close prey. After all, these creatures move slowly and can live for a long time in a fixed location with plenty of food. Lin, who had already regarded the soft-shelled turtle as his target, took out Tang Dao Wusheng and prepared to capture it as food for the exam. The sword lock on Wusheng's tail continued to stretch under the blessing of Lin's telepathy, and tied up the turtle the moment it rushed into the swamp. The turtle sensed the danger and stretched its neck to bite the chains wrapped around its body. Seeing this situation, Lin felt happy. He was worried that he could not kill the turtle completely. The moment the chain flew back, he chopped off the turtle's head with a knife. Looking at the bloody turtle carcass, Lin thought to himself, "It's a good bleeding port. You can start cooking after you take it back." Holding the turtle in his hand, Lin quickly rushed to the testing warehouse and prepared to start cooking the turtle in his hand. The moment he entered the examination room, Lin saw that many people were already busy cooking, and they were just complaining. Ignoring this situation, Lin thought it was completely normal. After all, Menkai's test questions were completely arbitrary and did not have any assessment points. Lin's appearance also attracted Menkai's attention. Looking at the turtle and other ingredients in Lin's hand, Menkai's beautiful eyes flashed, full of anticipation for what Lin would cook. Lin put the ingredients on the cooking table. Except for one turtle that was caught, Lin took out the remaining auxiliary materials from the storage room on his way back. After taking a look at the turtle, he saw that the turtle's wound was no longer bleeding. Lin was sure that the bleeding of the turtle had been completed. With a swipe of the kitchen knife in his hand, the turtle has been broken down into chunks. He took out a basin to put the decomposed turtle in, washed and soaked it, and then marinated it. Lin had briefly taken a look at the condiments prepared by Menkai. He was worthy of being a gourmet hunter and had a lot of everything. Even the cooking wine that Lin pickles is brand name, and you can fully appreciate Menkai's dedication to cooking. Before time travel, Lin had dismembered turtles countless times, but he was not very clear about how to do it, and he had never even practiced it. But this does not bother Lin. After all, as a citizen of China, you may not know how to cook, but you must know how to eat. Fortunately, turtle is a great tonic after all. Lin had eaten a lot of turtle dishes in his previous life, so he could only restore the steps as much as possible according to the taste in his memory. In Lin's view, turtle is nothing more than leaving the meat on the side, marinating it to remove the smell, and seasoning it while keeping the meat fresh and tender. As for which method to choose, Lin decided to use the simplest method, which is stewing. When the soft-shelled turtle is almost marinated, Lin has already prepared the required seasonings. As long as he controls the heat, the dish will be complete. Just as Lin was about to light the fire and burn the oil, Jitaraku, Killua and Hisoka had already finished the dishes and were giving them to Menkai to taste. This scene made Lin couldn't help but take a second look. 3 identical dishes were placed in front of Menkai, and Menkai cast a doubtful look at the 3 of them. Although Menkai was confused by the 3 identical steaks in front of her, she still took a bite in a professional spirit. After tasting the 3 steaks, Menkai said angrily, "Are you 3 sure you are not joking?" Menkai's sudden attack made the 3 of them a little confused as to what the woman in front of them meant. Chapter 93. Menkai looked at the puzzled Hisoka and others in front of him and said, "If you fail, do it again. Not only are the 3 dishes cooked the same, they also taste the same. I really don't know how you did it." Hearing Menkai's words, the 3 of them looked at each other. Killua said unconvinced, "Although our dishes are very similar, the taste is definitely not bad." Menkai nodded and explained, "The taste is just like that of ordinary steak. It is just ordinary. It has no characteristics and cannot satisfy my taste buds at all." Just as Killua was about to continue to refute, a special aroma came, attracting the attention of Killua and everyone present. "It smells so good. Menkai. I'm hungry." Boera was drooling and looking in Lin's direction motionlessly. At this time, Lin had already started to stir-fry the turtle, and the aroma of the stir-fry filled the entire venue. "Ah! It smells so good." Holding the prepared omelette rice, Xiaoja smelled the smell in the air as he walked. Originally, Xiaoja's sense of smell was much higher than that of ordinary people, and his sensitivity to fragrance made him even more intoxicated. Xiaoja walked up to Menkai and said confidently, "Try my cooking, special omelette rice, bird egg version." Menkai smelled the aroma in the air and looked at the golden omelette rice, and her appetite suddenly whetted her appetite. Picking up the spoon on the side, he gently took a spoonful under Xiaoja's expectant eyes and put it into his mouth to taste. Puff! After just 2 chews, Menkai spit out the food in his mouth. "It tastes terrible. Bird eggs are not suitable for making omuris at all. They are too fishy. Unqualified." Facing Menkai's merciless verdict, Xiaozhi was obviously disappointed. After all, I searched hard for ingredients to make it, but I didn't expect to receive such a review. Killua on the side saw that Gon's cooking was not up to par, and comforted him, "It's okay Gon, this woman's taste must be different from ordinary people." Xiaozhi nodded thoughtfully. This made Menkai, who was standing aside, instantly furious. Just when Menkai was about to get angry, Killua already had a premonition that something bad was going to happen, so he pulled Gon and left here immediately, heading in the direction of Rin. Illumi on the side has already left, and I don't know where he went. Hisoka brought his steak to his cooking table, cut a piece gracefully and took a bite, thinking to himself, "It's strange, the taste is just right." Gon and Killua walked to Lin's cooking table, smelling the fragrance that was constantly emanating from the pot, and were very curious about Lin's cooking. "Lin, what kind of food are you cooking?" Killua asked. Without stopping the movements in his hands, Lin simply replied, "Turtle." "Turtle?" Xiaozhi asked, "Isn't that a turtle? Can that kind of thing be eaten?" After hearing Xiaozhi's words, Lin remembered that turtles are called turtles in this world. Because of their thick shells, they are not brought to the dinner table. Seeing the turtle that was almost fried, Lin poured water into the pot, just covering the turtle a little, and started the second process of stewing. After closing the lid of the pot, Lin explained to Xiaozhi and the others, "It's edible. Turtle is not only delicious, but it's also a tonic with high edible value." "Really? Ryan?" Lin affirmed, "Of course. Don't worry, I will definitely give it to you to taste." Of course, Lin understood the purpose of these two little guys coming here. They obviously wanted to order a few pieces of meat from him to try through their words. Killua won't say it anymore. As a change type, it's normal to have this kind of thinking. As for Gon, although he looks innocent, he actually has a sinister attribute that is as good as gold. "Here, Lin, the omelette rice I made." Xiaozhi handed a spoonful of the omelette rice to Lin as if offering a gift. Seeing Xiaozhi's omelette rice, Lin curiously took a bite. While eating, Lin commented, It's a very ordinary omuras. Because it uses bird eggs, the egg smell is more obvious." Xiaozhi heard Lin's comment and said in a low voice, "The examiner said the same thing. This test is really too difficult." Killua echoed, "Except for Rin, no one here can pass this exam. There is no hunter who takes the cooking test. I'm not a chef, damn it." Listening to Killua and Gon's complaints, Rin smiled and said, "Don't worry. You will definitely be fine in this exam." After hearing this, the two looked at Lin, who looked confident, and said in unison, "How is that possible?" "Maybe. As you said, this is a hunter exam, not a chef exam. Just watch." Rin's words gave Gon and Killua a lot of reassurance, and the gloom on their faces was instantly wiped away. "Hey, Lin, when we go to find you later, you will prepare something for us to eat, right?" Killua looked at Lin with an excited expression, and the look of anticipation in his eyes couldn't be concealed at all. Lin thought for a moment and replied, "It should be no problem, as long as I have time." "Wow, that's great." Gon and Killua were overjoyed for a moment when they heard Lin's reply. As several people talked, time passed by. Everyone who submitted a dish went there happily and came back with their dishes disappointed. Without exception, all were judged to be unqualified. "Damn! My grilled fish is obviously delicious." Leorio vented his dissatisfaction while eating grilled fish, which made Kurapika on the side feel the same. Kurapika held the eliminated dishes and said, "I can understand why Leorio's grilled fish failed, so I would fail too." "Kurapika, how could you come here with a bunch of vegetables and compare to my grilled fish?" Leorio said, unconvinced. "Leorio, this is not an ordinary dish. This is a special dish of our Koluta tribe. Although the ingredients are not all the same, the taste is definitely not bad." Kurapika was obviously dissatisfied with the test results, and was filled with incomprehension about the test results. Suddenly, a burst of aroma that was stronger than before exploded in the examination room, attracting the attention of all the candidates. Everyone's eyes turned to Lin's direction, and what they saw was Lin, who had opened the lid of the pot. After opening the lid of the pot, Lin did not expect that the aroma of the pot would explode like a bomb, and even Lin, the producer, was somewhat immersed in it. The two little ones on the side had already drooled unknowingly, their eyes fixed on Lin's pot. There was not much soup left in the pot, only the bright-colored meat pieces exuded an alluring aroma. For a moment, the visual and olfactory enjoyment filled their minds. I want to eat it. Don't think this must be delicious. This was the only thought of the two at the moment. Dividing the soft shell turtle in the pot into 2 plates, Lin couldn't wait to taste one piece. The moment he entered his mouth, Lin was captured by this dish. Chapter 94. The moment you enter your mouth, the thick soup melts into your mouth. The salty flavor is combined with the richness of the stewed turtle. Although there are bones when you bite into it, the tender and smooth texture of the soft shell turtle adds a bit of delicacy to the previous richness. Saliva is secreted unconsciously. It seems that for the taste buds, eating as much of this food as possible is enough. The body instinctively repeats the swallowing action like a perpetual motion machine. Forced to resist the urge to finish the dishes, Lin was just about to serve Menkai a plate to enjoy. When he looked up, he found that Menkai and Bokhara were already approaching. Are you done? Lin. I really want to eat. I'm so hungry. I can't hold on anymore. Bokhara's saliva was already flowing down like a waterfall, and the temptation of delicious food was about to swallow up his reason. Forward. Lin was a little stunned when he saw this scene. He didn't expect that there were already people standing around him. Passing one of the plates to Menkai, Lin said, "This plate is for you." Then Lin looked at Bokhara, took a small portion from another plate and handed it to Bokhara. When Bokhara took the plate, Menkai had already picked up a piece of meat and put it in his mouth. Haha times, it's delicious. Menkai's face gradually became intoxicated, and the chopsticks in his hands picked up the food on the plate like a machine. Bokhara on the other side poured the meat in the bowl directly into his mouth and started chewing it without spitting out the bones. Seeing this scene, Lin was filled with shame and thought to himself, with Bokhara's appetite, if he doesn't become a professional hunter, he might starve to death. Turning his head again, all the turtles in front of Rin had been eaten. Not only Killua and others, but also some of the examinees who were watching took a piece. Lin, who only tasted one piece, couldn't help but feel a little regretful. He didn't expect these guys to do it so quickly. Of course, Lin's acquiescence was also responsible for this. After all, Menkai may face opposition from everyone later, so by leaving a favor at this time, Lin won't feel so guilty when he takes action. Lien, I didn't expect turtles to be so delicious. I didn't realize it before. Menkai had already finished the food on his plate, and his beautiful eyes were staring at Lin in front of him. In Menkai's heart, the curiosity about the handsome young man in front of him has never diminished from the moment they met. Every time they meet, the other person will definitely bring surprises to him. This feeling was something she had never experienced in her previous 10 years of life. A feeling gradually filled her heart. Although she had never experienced it before, she knew very well that this feeling was what people call happiness. Lin heard what Menkai said and explained, "This is not a turtle, this is called a turtle. The difference from a turtle is..." Following Lin's explanation, Menkai seemed to have opened the door to a new world, and was once again impressed by Lin's knowledge. "You're so awesome, Lin, you're qualified," Menkai said loudly. Lin shrugged incredulously, which was expected, but he also knew very well that this was also the beginning of trouble. Menkai looked around at everyone present and said calmly, "Is there any more food to be served? If not, I will announce the result." All the candidates present fell into silence for a while, but it was easy to see from their expressions that most of them were unconvinced. "I announce that the number of people who have qualified for the second round of the hunter exam is 1. As Menkai announced the results, the dissatisfied voices of the candidates present gradually came out. Hat! 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 Suddenly, there was a burst of laughter in the examination room. Everyone present turned to look, and an old man wearing a sports vest and a short figure with a green face appeared in everyone's sight. President Netero. President. Menkai and Bokhara were the first to react and greeted Netero. Netero stroked his beard and said with a smile, "It seems I came at the right time." Menkai stepped forward and explained, "These guys have been eliminated by me, but I didn't expect them to be unconvinced." It was obvious that Menkai's words successfully aroused the candidates' resistance. A candidate came forward and said, "You are the president of the Hunter Association. We don't agree with the results of the assessment, and we ask for a re-examination." The candidate's words were like a life-saving straw, arousing everyone's response, and all kinds of voices came and went. Yes, yes, we asked for a re-examination, and the man named Lin obviously knows the examiners. There must be something shady here. I knew there was something wrong. From the first test, I discovered that even though the test was about physical strength, this guy actually brought a bicycle. There must be something wrong, and I request the association to investigate strictly. I suspect that the examiner and Lin must be in a relationship. They have already hugged each other when they met. Facing the accusations from all the candidates, Menkai was so angry that she felt like starting a fight if they disagreed. Rin walked forward calmly, patted Menkai on the shoulder, told him to calm down, and then walked towards Netero. Looking at the old man in front of him, who was old but had infinite strength in his body, Lin said respectfully, "President Netero, this is the first time we meet, I am Lin Pester." "Ha! Ha! Little guy, you caused so much trouble when we first met. This meeting gift is not a small one." Netero's teasing tone made Lin twitch the corner of his mouth. But since Netero said this, it seemed to Lin that Netero was going to handle this matter personally, and as for the method, Lin could not intervene. Netero slowly walked up to everyone and said calmly, "Since everyone has opinions, I am not an unreasonable person. I declare that this exam is invalid and I will retake the exam with another question." Netero's voice appeared, causing the examinees present to show expressions of joy. "Mr. President, you haven't given us a reasonable solution to Lin's problem." Before the candidate could finish speaking, he was kicked out by Lin. Although Lin used his strength with this kick, the candidate still crashed the cooking table and fainted. "Now, do you still have any opinions?" Lin looked around at the candidates in the examination room, and the aura from his body unconsciously spread out. The powerful intimidation caused the candidates present to fall into silence. Hisoka, who was just squatting in the corner, saw this scene with an interesting expression on his lips. "The president has done it." Rin said something to Netero and then retreated behind everyone. "Examiner Menkai, please arrange a reasonable assessment." Netero thought for a while and felt that it would be better to leave it to Menkai to decide the test questions. After all, she was the examiner. "But as the only qualified candidate, Rin, I have specially prepared a test for you. I wonder if you are willing to take part." Netero looked at Lin, who was standing behind everyone, with a look of interest in his eyes. Chapter 95. Lin, who was standing behind all the candidates at this time, never expected that he would have his own affairs here. At the same time, he also knew that Netero would never target him for no reason, and there must be other purposes. After careful consideration, Lin understood that Netero's appearance in the examination room this time was definitely not informed by Sats like in the original work, but was completely aimed at him being prepared. After analyzing the causes and consequences, Lin had already made a decision in his mind. Under the eyes of everyone, Lin said slowly, "Since the president loves you so much, it would be inappropriate for me not to agree." "Haha, you are such a smart little guy." Netero smiled with his hands behind his hands and slowly walked out of the examination room under the gaze of everyone. "Wait a moment, President." Menkai stopped Netero and said slightly embarrassed, "Can the president borrow the airship?" Netero said without looking back, "I'll leave the rest to you, Zayadu." "Understood, President." The bean-faced man replied, then walked to Menkai, and the two started discussing. Seeing Netero walking out, Lin immediately followed him and asked, "President, I wonder what your exam questions are." Netero stood outside the examination room, looking at the sky, as if checking the weather conditions. Netero turned his head to look at Lin and said calmly, "Last time you said you wanted to learn my heart drop fist." Boom! Boom! At this moment, Lin's heartbeat began to speed up, and in his high-spirited state, he even heard the sound of his heartbeat. Forcibly suppressing the excitement, Lin said as calmly as possible, "Yes, President, can you teach me?" Before taking this hunter exam, Lin had a hunch that Netero would most likely meet him during this exam. Although it is a premonition, there is also a unilateral analysis by Lin. After all, with Lin's current status in the Hunter Association, Lin is qualified to participate in some decisive meetings. This means that Lin has the qualifications to win over Netero, and in terms of the faction to which he belongs, Lin is a legitimate disciple of the Shinjin-ryu, and there is no possibility of rebellion. There was only one question, and that was whether Netero would look up to Lin with his strength. The so-called individual examination in front of him is probably an alternative assessment carried out by Netero in order to test himself. Netero glanced at Lin, knowing in his heart that Lin was suppressing his excitement. But he didn't want Lin to get it so easily, and more importantly, he didn't know what this young man was thinking. Recalling the scene when he met Jin, in just a brief moment of communication, he had a profound understanding that Jin at that time was not only at the level of a monster in terms of talent, but his ambition was beyond the power of ordinary people. In Netero's opinion, his ambition was no less than that of his son Byand, or even worse. "Hey! Lin, can you play volleyball?" Netero asked. Volleyball. When he thought of volleyball, Lin immediately understood that Netero wanted to play his favorite game with him. "Will not." Rin answered very readily, not because he didn't want to play volleyball with Netero, but because he really couldn't play. Ignoring what Lin said, Netero condensed a red teleportation bullet in his hand, patted it on the ground twice and said, "It doesn't matter if it doesn't work, as long as you can catch the ball." Faced with Netero's attitude of being ready to serve at any time, Lin immediately distanced himself from him to prevent himself from being unable to react when Netero served. There was a distance of about 20 meters between the two, and Lin and Netero were facing each other from afar. Netero looked in the direction of the airship and said slowly, "Wait a little longer until they fly farther away." Lin looked up and saw that the airship had flown some distance away, and Zyja and others on the deck were looking in his direction from a distance. After waving with the protagonist group, Lin knew very well that he must give his best in this assessment of his own. After all, Netero was one of the top figures in the human world. "While I have time, let me explain the rules first." Netero smiled and said slowly, "We will play 3 goals. The team that cannot catch the ball will lose." Hearing this, Lin nodded, indicating that he understood this. Then Netero changed his voice and said, "Since it is a game, it has to have a bonus, otherwise it will be a bit boring, don't you think so, Lin?" Lin thought for a while and replied, "President, you don't have any conspiracy, do you?" "No, how is that possible? I'm just an ordinary old man." Netero denied it directly and acted very innocent. But Lin could clearly know from Netero's bottomless eyes that the old guy's purpose was anything but simple. "Ugh! President! To put it bluntly, we are all our own people, why bother with all these bells and whistles?" Rin sighed, shrugged helplessly, and planned to show his hand to Netero directly. After all, he was not yet qualified to fight with Netero. Netero waved his hand and said relaxedly, "You are overthinking. I really just want to play a game with you. And I promise that no matter you win or lose in this game, I will teach you the heart drop Xuan Ting Ting." "Really?" Lin said in surprise. "Of course, I don't even bother to lie to a brat like you." At this moment, Lin felt a little incredible. He didn't expect the surprise to come so suddenly. After thinking about it, Lin discovered a lot of things that were wrong. Since Netero came up and made a big promise, it meant that Netero must have a big plan in mind, which he felt he had to guard against. Faced with the benefits that are about to be obtained and the corresponding unknown risks, the contradiction between the two parties makes Lin fall into a tangle. After struggling for a moment, Lin decided that he had to go through it even if there was a mountain of swords and fire ahead, and it didn't matter if he owed Netero a request. After all, there is no difference between learning Xin Dit Xuanting and owing Netero a favor. It's just that one depends on the situation and the other is necessary. "President, that request must be within my ability. If I don't want to, you can't force me." After thinking for a while, Lin decided to test Netero's attitude. "Ho! Ho, young people are so bad, they are always afraid of this and that." Netero changed his voice and then said, "But I can promise you, it must be within your ability." Hearing Netero's promise, Lin's vigilance relaxed a little, and he solemnly said, "I agree." Hearing Lin's words of agreement, Netero's eyes narrowed, as if he had completed some preparations, which gave Lin a bad feeling. "Then, let's begin." Chapter 96. Start. Rin's expression became alert, and he was fully alert to Netero's movements. After flicking the thought on the ground twice, Netero threw it into the sky and clapped it with one palm the moment it fell. "Oh! Kind." Looking at the teleportation bomb flying over, Lin concentrated his telepathy in his hand and slapped the teleportation bomb back with his backhand. Lin received this blow easily, and at the same time, he also knew that this was just Netero's warm-up. Snapped. The teleportation bomb flew back again, and Lin decided to strike first. After all, facing the powerful Netero, it was undoubtedly a stupid thing to hold back. Boom! Lin hit the teleportation bullet with his palm, making a thick sound. The powerful telepathy power caused the telepathy bullet to begin to deform. Seeing this situation, Netero showed a smile and said, young people are impulsive and don't give the elderly a chance to warm up. Boom! Netero hit back the teleportation bullet again, but this time it fell into Lin's hands, and it was obviously much stronger than before. Holding the bullet in his hand, Lin said calmly, "If I keep my hand when playing games with the president, wouldn't it be disrespectful to the president?" After saying this, Lin threw the mental bomb into the sky, and the moment it fell, a powerful and heavy ball was released. Oh! Netero raised his eyebrows, looked at the teleportation bullets flying over, and hit them back with the same force. Boom! Boom! Bang! Bang! The two of them went back and forth, hitting each other with teleportation bullets, each time using a force stronger than the previous one. Gradually, the bullet began to be unable to withstand the strength of the two people, and signs of fragmentation began to appear around it. Lin knew that the reason why this teleportation bomb had not exploded yet was because he and Netero injected a little telepathy into it with every blow to maintain the shape of the telepathy bomb. It's just that the power of the two people now has completely exceeded the upper limit of the telepathy bomb. As long as one party makes a mistake, the telepathy bomb will explode in the other's hand at any time. Looking at the flying bullets, Lin started from his heart, and a bold idea appeared in his mind. Condensing the mental energy in his hand, Lin slapped out a palm with all his strength. The mental bomb suddenly deformed, and the broken traces around it became more obvious. "Go with!" Rin shouted loudly, and the teleportation bullet flew in the direction of Netero with powerful power. Seeing that the teleportation bullet was about to shatter, Netero smiled scornfully, and while preparing to catch the teleportation bullet, he maintained the fragmentation around the teleportation bullet, and then gave Lin a fatal blow. Suddenly, as the teleportation bullet was flying to Netero, something seemed to have changed inside, and it began to expand irregularly. Realizing that something was wrong, Netero had no time to react. The moment the teleportation bullet approached at extremely high speed, an explosion sounded. Seeing the smoke and dust caused by the explosion of the teleportation bomb, Lin knew that his plan had succeeded. However, because of the smoke and dust, Lin could not clearly see Netero's condition. However, there seemed to be a flash of golden light just now, and Lin knew without thinking that Netero had used Bai Shi Guanyin. When the smoke and dust cleared, Lin saw Netero standing there intact, and said in his heart, "Smoke does not harm the law as expected." Hu! Ho! Ho! Netero burst out laughing, and his eyes gradually became serious. "It's a really good idea. I actually thought of using my own mind to destroy the inside of the mind bomb. This is not something ordinary people with mind abilities can do." Netero did not hesitate to praise Lin at all, and continued, "Young man, at your current age, your starting point is not even comparable to that of my old man. I'm very curious about how you achieve such sophisticated control of mind and such a strong body." Faced with Netero's doubts, Lin wrote a series of characters in the air and said calmly, "It's very simple: read more, sleep more, eat less snacks, and exercise more." Oh! Is it a divine word? No wonder. Netero had a tone that was true, and his eyes were a little more interested in Lin. "I don't believe you are trying to prevaricate me with such words," Netero said incredulously. Lin shrugged helplessly, saying that he had nothing to say. There was absolutely no way he could tell anything about the prison. After all, it was the basis for his current livelihood. Seeing that Lin refused to disclose the information, Netero stopped asking and condensed a thought bomb again. In Lin's opinion, the quality of this teleportation bomb was obviously higher than the one just now, and it was obviously enhanced by Netero. Netero directly threw the bullet into the air, looked at Lin and made a gesture and said, "Haven't you always wanted to learn the heart drop fist? Now let's experience it." Without Netero's reminder, Lin had already started to become alert when he saw his signature move, and even began to gather most of his mind energy into his palms. Coming! Seeing the bullets falling from the sky, Lin thought to himself. Boom! Without any bells and whistles, Rin was directly knocked out by the thought bullet. The powerful force carried him flying all the way and broke more than a dozen big trees. Stop! The power of the teleportation bomb was reduced. When Lin's body hit a tree, he forcibly stopped and held the teleportation bomb firmly in his palm. Looking at Netero, who was about 200 meters away from him, Lin kept recalling the scene where Netero served just now in his mind. The moment Netero served, Lin's naked eyes simply saw a flicker of Netero's movement, and in the blink of an eye the bullet rushed towards him with powerful force. The hands wrapped in thought energy instinctively caught the thought bullet, as if the target of the thought bullet was in Lin's hands. It's just that the powerful force was completely unreasonable, and it took Lin to fly directly for a distance of about 200 meters, even though there were more than a dozen big trees as a buffer. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and Lin knew it was caused by the shock to his internal organs. In addition to the injured internal organs, he felt several broken ribs, a slight fracture in his left forearm, and even various injuries all over his body. Cough. Cough. After coughing a few times, Lin thought to himself, it's too strong. This old man is really strong. I really don't know how desperate people who were contemporaries of Netero would be when they compete together. Xiaobai, Dragon Pattern Mode. Summoning Xiaobai, Lin gave a simple order, and Xiaobai got into Lin's body, turned into a dragon mark on his chest, and began to heal Lin's injuries. Feeling that his body was gradually recovering, Lin walked towards Netero with the bomb in his hand. President Netero, I didn't expect you to be merciless. I almost took a step ahead of you. Dragging the bullet in his hand, Lin's body had been healed during the march, and he teased Netero with a heavy heart. Looking at the intact Lin, Netero said in an excited tone, what an incredible little guy. I didn't expect that I didn't score this goal. Chapter 97. The relaxed and excited words, the at-ease attitude, the unfathomable strength, everything is Netero's capital for saying this. Listening to Netero's words, Lin thought to himself, I almost lost half my life just now, but you were so concerned that you didn't score. Lin replied solemnly, did the president just prepare to kill me? Hearing this, Netero said casually, of course not, I just want to get over it once and for all. After seeing Netero's attitude, Lin knew very well that things like scoring were not important to Netero. Netero was fully capable of ending the game directly. But facing Netero's individual assessment, Lin would never admit defeat directly. On the one hand, this was his opportunity to get in touch with the top of the human world, and he could well measure his own strength. On the other hand, there is the desire for Xin Dichuanting. That unique martial arts realm will become an important cornerstone of Lin's growth. It cannot be directly understood by simply performing 10,000 thanks straight fists. At the same time, Lin, who was possessed by Xiaobai, knew very well that this opportunity to compete alone with Netero was very precious. Xiaobai's possession time was only 30 minutes, and he must exert his full strength as much as possible within 30 minutes. While Netero is not serious yet, it is best to give him a heavy blow by surprise. Of course, it is best to win the game. Even if he loses, Lin is not worried at all. After all, according to the plot in the original work, Netero and the Ant King will die together in 2 years at most. So in Lin's opinion, lose? I can delay you to death even if I delay, there is no need to worry about what Netero will ask for. Lin, who had already made up his mind, felt no pressure at all except for Netero's powerful strength in this game. It was obvious that Netero had no intention of killing him, so he just had to have more fun than Netero. Without replying to Netero's words, Lin threw the ball high, and his powerful and heavy serve represented his reply. Seeing the teleportation bullet shot out by Lin, Netero raised his eyebrows and said, young man, you really can't hold your breath. I thought you would take a breather for a while. Boom! In just the blink of an eye, the teleportation bomb had already arrived in front of Lin, but at this time, Lin had already taken precautions and punched directly on the teleportation bomb. Although Lin couldn't see Netero's attack, he knew very well that Netero's attack would definitely come to him. And Netero will never use other methods to win. This has a lot to do with Netero's martial arts obsession. What a martial artist looks forward to most is the duel between individuals, the ultimate one-on-one contest. Bang! 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 After hitting the ball several times, Lin gradually couldn't bear the powerful power of the teleportation bomb. Just when he was about to activate the burst mode for a surprise blow, Netero's gesture changed again. Boom! Facing this ball whose trajectory could only be sensed, Lin's heart sank, and his body's subconscious reaction turned to avoid the ball. Boom! The thought bomb flew into the forest behind him, making a violent explosion, and the strong impact blew Lin's long hair flying. A drop of cold sweat flowed from Lin's forehead. Although he just instinctively avoided the blow just now, the strong wind pressure made her understand that that blow was definitely the pinnacle of human beings. At this moment, Lin looked at Netero blankly and murmured, 100 styles Guanyin. Netero looked at Lin, who was a little dazed, and said excitedly, 1:1, we both have 2 goals left. Hearing Netero's words, Lin came back to his senses and said angrily, President Netero, that ball just hit me at the head. It will kill someone. Condensing a new teleportation bullet, Netero took 2 shots and explained, no one will die. I know that with your body's strength, if you withstand that blow, you will be seriously injured at most. It really makes me curious. What kind of training does it take to have such physical fitness at your age? Lin suppressed his anger and replied, I just said it, it's your business to believe it or not. Although Lin was surprised that Netero used his physical body to perform the 100 styles of Guanyin, he still felt a little secretly happy in his heart. Netero was right. In Lin's current state, the most he could sustain from that blow was serious injury and coma. But on the other hand, it also shows that the force of the hit just now was obviously close to exceeding the upper limit of the 2 people's physical endurance. This also means that in terms of physical fitness, Rin is not far different from the current Netero. Although this is partly because Netero's physical fitness has declined due to his age. But it also proves that Lin is starting to catch up with the top echelon in terms of physical strength, and currently Lin is only eating A-level ingredients, so there is still a lot of room for growth in physical strength. Notice. Throwing the ball into the sky, Netero said something, and made the same gesture again, and Lin immediately became alert. Boom! 100 postures of Guanyin in one posture. This time Netero's momentum was completely different from before, and he even called out the name of the move. Faced with the teleportation bomb that couldn't even see its shadow, although Lin was prepared, he still had no way to crack it. Lin had no choice but to dodge the teleportation bullet, while secretly thinking about countermeasures. Boom! A more violent explosion sounded than before, and this time the bullet flew farther, blowing up a large area of trees. Feeling the pressure of the wind blowing against his face, Lin's heart was filled with a sense of powerlessness. In the distant sky, an empty boat stayed in mid-air. Everyone was concentrated on the deck, looking at the scene of the woods being blown up in the distance. The bean-faced man stood on the handrail of the deck and murmured, it seems that the president is having a lot of fun. Looking into the distance again, the bean-faced man turned and walked towards the control room of the airship, preparing to ask the captain of the airship to drive the airship further. Hey! Zaija, what do you think the test Lin is conducting is? How did it cause the explosion? Killua expressed everyone's curiosity, and different test scenes appeared in his mind. Zaija shook his head and replied, I don't know, but since it is the exam for the president of the Hunter Association, it will definitely not be easy. It's a pity that I can't go and take a look with my own eyes. Killua said disappointedly. Suddenly, Leorio shouted in surprise, look! What are those 2 people doing? Everyone looked and saw Hisoka and Illumi standing on the handrails at the edge of the airship, looking at the direction of the explosion. Sensing Leorio's voice, Hisoka turned around and waved to them before jumping off the airship. Chapter 98. Seeing this situation, the protagonist Tuan and others immediately ran over to check the situation. Looking down from the airship, the 2 figures were completely invisible. Leorio was shocked and said, there must be something wrong with these 2 people's heads. They jumped from such a high place. Zaija lowered his head and thought for a while, then said firmly, no, something must have happened that interested them, and they couldn't wait to rush over. The thing that interests them now must be because of Rin. I'm quite curious. How about we go take a look too? Killua seemed to be interested, looking at the forest under the airship eager to try. Although Zaija didn't say anything, there was an inquiring look in his eyes, and he didn't know what he was thinking. Just when the 2 were eager to give it a try, the voice of the bean-faced man came from not far away. Looking at Netero who was preparing to serve in front of him, Lin took a deep breath, and his eyes became determined and focused. He has no intention of surrendering. Although the battle has been fierce so far in the game, and Netero has not yet seen his bottom line, he still has explosion mode that he has not used, so it can be regarded as a small saving grace. It's just that the last trump card had to be used now. After all, Lin had no way to deal with the 100-style Guanyin produced by Netero's heart drop fist. Having made up his mind, Lin no longer hesitated and said solemnly, President, although I don't know what your purpose is in arranging this game. But I am still very grateful to you for giving me this opportunity to see clearly the gap between me and the top echelons of mankind. Then, Lin said with an excited tone, but since it is a game, then naturally I want to play it to the fullest. Burst mode. Boom. With a silent recitation in his heart, Lin was enveloped in endless thought energy, and powerful power emerged from his body instantly. Swelled, so swollen. This was Lin's only feeling at this time. Different from the previous explosion mode, at this time Lin felt that his body could no longer withstand the pressure caused by the explosion of life essence. Comparing it with the previous burst mode, Lin found that the original improvement was doubled at most, but now it has been increased to about 2.5 times, or even close to 3 times. Without time to reflect on this new situation, Lin looked in the direction of Netero. At this moment, he felt omnipotent. Netero, who was on the opposite side, also noticed something unusual about Lin, but didn't say anything. He just threw the ball up and kicked off with the 100-style Guanyin. Although Netero was curious about Rin's explosive strength, he also knew that everyone had cards and secrets. As for exposing others in private, that's just his hobby. The most important thing at the moment is to have fun, no matter what means the other party adopts. The moment the ball was fired, Lin completely let go of his spirit and tried his best to improve his 5 senses. At the moment when the mental bullet flew, Lin used all his strength to sense it, but his vision was completely useless, and he couldn't even see the shadow of the ball. Suddenly, Lin felt the wind pressure coming towards his face. He felt happy at the same time, and punched out with a large amount of mental energy. Boom! The teleportation bullet appeared on Lin's fist. Due to the impact, it paused for a second and then rushed towards Netero with even greater power. As he cracked Netero's attack, Lin did not relax his vigilance, but felt the arm that had just been repaired by Xiaobai. This ball directly broke Lin's arm, and it was only with Xiaobai's powerful medical ability that he could repair it instantly. When Netero saw the bomb being shot back, there was a look of joy in his eyes, and a huge statue of Guanyin appeared behind him. Ho! Ho! You really brought me a lot of surprises. It seems that my old bones have to show some strength. Suddenly, Netero looked in the direction behind Lin. Behind him, the 100 Shiki Guanyin stretched out 2 long arms to catch the incoming teleportation bomb steadily. Is the audience here? Ignoring the 2 people who had just arrived, Netero decided to use Guanyin to increase Lin's strength. Looking at the Beishi Guanyin behind Netero, Lin couldn't hide the shocked look in his eyes. He knew that the giant statue of Guanyin in front of him was not the result of Netero's creation, but was automatically generated by Netero's practice of hundreds of forms of Guanyin. The ability of mindfulness can also be understood as thoughts, etc. And the ability of mindfulness can also be said to be formed by the emotional needs deep in the human heart. The huge Guanyin in front of us can also be understood as the product of Netero's combination of martial arts and telekinesis. It can be attacked and defended, and has very comprehensive functions. At this time, Lin turned his head and looked at the woods not far to the left. 2 familiar figures were standing on the tree trunks. Looking at the devastated scene around him, Hisoka couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes and said with a smile, "It seems we are not too late." Kaba! Kaba! He made unexplained noises from his mouth, and stared at the scene in front of him. Netero smiled with an excited expression, "I will not show mercy next time, and judging from your state, you won't die easily." With an excited smile, Beishi Guanyin behind Netero dragged the bullet with one hand and struck it out with the other. He let go of his senses with all his strength. The moment he sensed the wind pressure, Lin already knew the direction in which the thought bomb was going to hit. Boom! This time, the bullet was spinning continuously and rested on Lin's fist wrapped in the energy. Click! 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 Ignoring the sound of fractures coming from his arm, with constant exertion and repair, Lin successfully hit Netero with the telekinesis bomb. Netero was overjoyed to see this scene, and with a bang, Beishi Guanyin, under Netero's control, directly shot out the teleportation bomb. It's just that although the teleportation bomb at this time has been strengthened, the fragmentation around it proves that it is on the verge of exploding. Ignoring other things, the moment the teleportation bomb was shot out, Lin took out Wusan and turned the blade to be alert for Netero's next attack. Sensing the direction of the teleportation bullet again, Lin directly hit the surface of the telepathy bullet with the back of his sword. Click! 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 This time it wasn't the sound of a broken arm, but the sound of bullets constantly rubbing against the back of Wushan's knife. The powerful force forced Lin to slide backwards. Go with! Lin roared angrily, and used all his strength to shoot out the teleportation bomb again. Although he successfully resisted the ball, Lin knew that he could not waste it like this anymore. After all, Xiaobai's possession time and his body's endurance limit had almost reached its peak. 3 minutes. With a secret thought in his heart, Lin knew that he must exert his full strength within 3 minutes and force out as much of Netero's strength as possible. Even if he loses this bet game, it will be more valuable. He wants to see how far he is from the peak of human beings. Chapter 99. Bang! Ba! Bai Shiguanyan caught the teleportation bomb steadily, but Netero did not directly fight back. Looking calmly in Lin's direction, Netero smiled and said, "It seems that the quality of this teleportation bomb is still too low and needs to be strengthened." Then, under Lin's gaze, Bai Shiguanyan poured a large amount of thought energy into it. In just a moment, the thought bomb that was about to be broken returned to its original state. At the same time, the color of the Neon Dan's body surface was gradually assimilated into a golden color like the sun, and its quality was obviously improved a lot than before. Rin also took advantage of Netero's opportunity to repair his teleportation bombs and move his body to make his body more adaptable to the forcibly increased power. Since developing his telekinesis ability, Rin has not used burst mode many times. It was not until today that he tried his best with Netero that he felt its shortcomings. Of course, the sudden increase in power is better, but it may not be suitable for all battles. The few counterattacks just now were not so perfect in Lin's opinion. Although they were better than before the explosion mode was carried out, the power exerted was only about 70% of what it is now. Lin knew very well that this was caused by his failure to fully grasp the power. And 70% of this is because he has learned the divine characters and has strengthened his control of mind energy. After simply moving his body, Lin began to adapt to the strength in his body and roughly estimate his body's condition. I found that my body has gradually begun to adapt to those huge thoughts, but it is not the power it brings, and it is never my own. It is not yet certain how much it can be exerted. President, serve. 3 minutes. In Netero's surprised eyes, Lin raised 3 fingers. After 3 minutes, I will give in regardless of whether the score is up or not. I will use all my strength. Rin said it very seriously, which made Netero look a little surprised. What an interesting kid. I didn't expect that he would be ready to give it a try when his strength is so disparate. With an excited expression, Netero used the 100 Shiki Guanyin to shoot out a golden light. The speed of the teleportation bomb was very fast, so fast that when Lin reacted, he was already close to his eyes. What? Boom! The teleportation bomb was hit by Lin's knife and he hit back instantly. When Hisoka on the side saw this scene, there was a strange light in his eyes, and he was so excited that he said, "I knew this good show came at the right time. I didn't expect you to hide it so deeply, Lin." Compared to Hisoka's excitement, Illumi on the side looked calmly at the 2 men hitting the ball back and forth on the court, wondering what was going on in his mind. Boom! Netero's ball knocked Lin back several meters. This was not due to a lack of strength in Lin, but because Netero's hitting speed was faster. As soon as Lin felt the wind pressure, the teleportation bomb had already arrived in front of him, and he could only use as much power as possible to fight back. But thanks to Netero's ridiculously strong every shot, Lin became more proficient in using the increased power. Hitting the ball back again, Lin knew that he would be hit by the telekinetic bomb sooner or later if he continued like this. He didn't want to taste the telekinetic bomb that was strengthened to the extreme by Netero. With that power, given his current physical condition, although he may not necessarily die if he is hit, serious injury is certain. In an instant, Lin's plan started from his heart, and the sword lock on Wu Sheng's tail quickly extended, forming a dense defense line a few meters in front of Lin. Seeing the knife lock floating in front of him, Netero grinned and said, "What a smart kid. It's a pity that everything is useless in the face of absolute strength." Netero spoke confidently, and the 100-style Guanyin in front of him struck without mercy. Boom! The thought bullet turned into a stream of light and flew towards Lin, but it only hit Lin's knife lock halfway. Wow! The strength of the knife lock could not withstand the extremely fast teleportation bullet. The moment it was bounced away, Lin started to take action. Wu Sheng, who gathered a large amount of thought energy, slashed out with his sword. This sword passed through the position of the sword lock, and there was no possibility of cutting the air. The moment the teleportation bomb was struck at Netero, Lin felt a sense of relief. Ever since Netero used the 100 Shiki cannon, every shot Lin hit would take a lot of energy. These energy responses only account for a small part, and are more used to sense the location of the thought bullets. Now that through the identification of the sword lock and Lin's ability to fight back with all his strength, he was very sure to force out more of Netero's strength. Boom! Bang! Bang! Bang bang bang! Lin and Netero were fighting back and forth, and Hisoka and Illumi were watching very intently. It's just that Illumi is still disguised and his expression cannot be seen, while Hisoka on the side is quite eager to give it a try. 2 minutes passed quickly. Within these 2 minutes, the two of them went back and forth, each returning the telegram fired by the other. The only difference between the two parties is that Lin is becoming more and more skilled in the use of power, while Netero, who is standing aside, always uses the same move. Seeing that Lin had adapted to the rhythm of Beishi Guanyin through his own unique method, Netero was not prepared to keep it any longer. 100 Styles of Guanyin. With a silent recitation in his heart, the Beishi Guanyin in front of Netero retreated behind Netero and put his hands together in the same posture as Netero. Seeing this scene, Lin felt a sudden change in his heart. He knew that Netero was getting serious. He couldn't help but secretly make a calculation in his mind and recall the information about Beishi Guanyin. The 100-style Guanyin is not only the name of Netero's ability to read, but also the boxing technique created by Netero's mastery of martial arts. The foundation of this set of boxing techniques is the moves created by Netero through his 10,000 siege punches per day, based on the heart drop boxing ting he learned, and his knowledge of martial arts. There are a total of 100 moves in the 100-style Guanyin, which can also be said to be only 2 moves. One move is the 99-style Guanyin 1 palms. From 99, it continuously fires out combos at the speed of light. It is impossible for ordinary people to withstand it. The other pose is equivalent to the ultimate secret of Netero, the 100-style Guanyin. 0 style. In this catching game, except for the 98st and th forms of Beishi Guanyin, the other forms are simply impossible to appear in the way of counterattack. But apart from the 0 type, what Lin cares about most is that since the appearance of the 100 Shiki Guanyin, he has been using 2 hands to fight the enemy. Before Lin could continue to think, the 100 Shiki Guanyin behind Netero stretched out 2 palms to catch the bullets steadily, and then more palms slapped on the backs of the 2 palms. Seeing this scene, Lin broke into a cold sweat and felt a tremor in his heart. Kid! If you can catch it, come and catch it! Netero laughed wildly, and the moment his gesture changed, the bullet seemed to disappear out of thin air. There was no one caught off guard, and even the chain in front of Lin had no trace of being touched. At this moment, Lin felt as if he was surrounded by a huge sense of crisis, and his whole body was in a state of facing death. Chapter 100. Wrapped in this intense sense of crisis, Lin seemed to have given up the ability to think and entered a strange world. There was nothingness ahead, and a shadow seemed to appear behind Lin, and the sickle in the figure's hand was swung down ruthlessly. At this moment, time seemed to stop flowing. Lin turned around in a void of consciousness and looked at the shadow wielding a scythe behind him. In an instant, the phantom scythe swung down, and the scene before the time passed through Lin's eyes flashed through his eyes. Lin, our old Li family's sword skills must be passed down. Remember, people can die, and everyone will die, but the sustenance of thousands of years can never be cut off. This is the inheritance left by our ancestors. Familiar pictures, familiar words, and familiar names. Lin's vision began to blur at some point. He looked at the real figure in front of him and saw the scene where his grandfather encouraged him when he was learning the sword. The scene in front of him continued to extend, and before his eyes appeared the scene of wielding the knife countless days and nights in spring, summer, autumn, and winter. The master who taught Lin the basic sword skills said seriously, before learning the sword, you must remember that as a swordsman, your sword can be broken and your hands can be broken. Even if you face a master, you can lose, but the courage of a swordsman never throw it away. From the moment you come into contact with the sword, you must always remember one thing. There is no strongest sword, only a stronger sword. The young Lin nodded in understanding and continued chopping under the locust tree in his hometown. Every noon, the parents at home would come to bring cooked meals and watch Lin gobbling up the food with smiles on their faces and deep affection in their eyes. As the pictures continued to emerge, a tear left the corner of Lin's eyes, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Wu Sheng didn't know when it had appeared in his hands. He didn't know what he was thinking, or maybe he wasn't thinking about anything at all. The scene in front of him returned to before the phantom again. At this moment, Lin's figure moved. His expression was a little dull, and his eyes seemed a little hollow. He slowly raised Wu Sheng in his hand and slashed towards the phantom with a knife. Netero, who was outside, noticed something strange about Lin the moment the ball was fired. Even Hisoka and Illumi on the side looked at this attack with fear. Without any thinking or judgment, the two of them knew very clearly that Lin would never be able to take this blow. This is not a simple attack on strength, but has reached another level, which is also a realm that the two of them yearn for. How will you respond? Kid, if you can't catch it, you will die. At the moment of serving, Netero secretly thought to himself that he was completely sure of this blow, which came from his infinite confidence in his own martial arts. Although it looks like just superimposed power on the palm of your hand, it actually contains the unique power of Guanyin in all its forms. It is equivalent to the strongest attack that Netero can currently perform, except for Type 0. The moment the thought bomb disappeared, Hisoka and Zittala's hearts were already in their throats with pain, and the scene of Lin being knocked away even appeared in their minds. In the eyes of everyone, Lin seemed to be stunned, with only a dull look in his eyes. Netero noticed something was wrong with Lin immediately. Just when he secretly regretted that he had struck too hard, Lin looked over with his empty eyes. In just a moment, Netero was shocked by the aura and eyes around Lin. In Netero's eyes, Lin instantly raised his sword and slashed it with all his strength, causing even the surrounding space to feel distorted. SHH. The golden teleportation bullet stopped in front of Lin, and after a few seconds, it was split into two halves. There was no explosion or other phenomena, and it turned into golden light spots and disappeared into the air. Although Netero saw part of the action, Hisoka and Illumi who were watching had their eyes widened with expressions of disbelief. Even Illumi's mouth no longer made the sound kaba. Kaba. Netero looked a little strange when he saw the scene in front of him, and murmured, "It's very similar to my original state, but it's a completely different state." Surge. Xiaobai detached himself from Lin's body, let out a weak cry and then disappeared. Lin seemed to have completely lost his perception of the outside world, and always maintained the posture where he had finished swinging the knife, motionless. Netero and others did not go to interfere with Lin, and seemed to be waiting quietly for him to regain consciousness. At this time, deep in Lin's consciousness, Lin maintained the same posture as the figure in the outside world, but the phantom holding a sickle in front of him had been cut in half by Lin. After a long time, Lin in the outside world gradually regained consciousness, but the moment he regained consciousness, an extreme feeling of weakness spread throughout his body. Plop! With a sound, Lin fell directly to the ground. Netero was the first to notice that Lin was awake, and immediately came to Lin and observed Lin carefully. Hisoka and Illumi, who were on the tree trunks in the distance, saw Netero walking in front of Lin and hurried over. Lin was feeling very uncomfortable as he fell to the ground. Not only was Wu Sheng underneath him constantly stinging him, but he also had some difficulty breathing. After taking Wu Sheng into prison, Lin turned over with great effort, breathing heavily. Seeing this scene, Netero smiled and said, "How did you feel about that stabbing just now?" Without answering Netero's question, Lin felt like a fish that landed on the beach. He couldn't even take a breath and had no time to reply. Hisoka and Illumi came to Netero and looked at Lin lying on the ground, with different expressions. "I really didn't expect you to retain so much strength. I'm looking forward to our showdown even more." Hisoka's mind began to imagine the scene of fighting Lin again, and his body began to tremble with excitement. He knew very well that compared to the duel with Crollo, which was all about tactics, Rin was his new pursuit. As for Netero on the side, Hisoka admits that he likes to fight with strong men, but he will not seek death. The two parties are obviously not on the same level, at least not yet. Illumi on the side kept saying Kaba. Kaba. But from the way he stared at Lin, it seemed that his mood was not as calm as on the surface. Hu. Ho. Ho. What an incredible kid. It seems that sooner or later I won't be your match. Netero sighed sincerely, saying that his family knew his own affairs. Although he still retained his strength in this game, he also saw Lin's future growth potential. Chapter 101. Lin's potential is huge in Netero's view, and even his younger self was far inferior to him. At this moment, Netero seemed to see the rise of a behemoth in the future. It's just that Netero doesn't know whether this behemoth will become the backbone of mankind or a demon that brings disaster. After breathing for a while, Rin finally recovered, but the pain coming from his body was extremely strong. Struggling to sit up from the ground, Rin asked Netero, "President, what just happened? Why did I suddenly fall to the ground?" Faced with Lin's inquiry, Netero secretly thought, "Sure enough. You really don't remember? You just swung a powerful knife." Hisoka's expression was thoughtful, asking about Lin's amazing knife attack just now. After carefully recalling it in his mind, Lin found that he seemed to have entered a strange realm at that time, and many childhood memories appeared in his mind. As for what happened next, I have no memory at all, as if I had completely lost consciousness. Shaking his head, Lin replied, my memory seems to stop before the president served, and what happened after that is completely unclear. After hearing Lin's answer, Hisoka nodded thoughtfully, and then looked at Netero. Lin, who was sitting on the ground, also had the same question. He knew very well what must have happened just now. He looked at Netero with a questioning look in his eyes. Netero didn't answer any questions, raised his hand and fired a thought bullet into the sky. Bang! The thought bomb exploded in the air. Seeing this scene, Lin and others knew that this was Netero sending a signal to the bean-faced man. Netero smiled and said nothing, remained calm in the eyes of everyone's questions, completely ignoring everyone present. I'm so tired. I can't care about that much anymore. I want to take a nap. Seeing that Netero was not prepared to answer the question, Lin began to feel relaxed. In an instant, a lot of fatigue rushed over him, and a deep sleepiness filled his mind. Seeing that Lin was already lying on the ground and sleeping, Netero thought to himself, this is the reaction that should be had. Who? Ho! Netero laughed twice and said to Hisoka and the others, I'll leave him to you. After saying that, Netero walked aside, obviously not wanting to communicate too much with the two of them. Seeing this scene, Hisoka and Illumi knew in their hearts that Netero would definitely not reveal too much, and naturally they would not ask for boring questions. Looking at each other, the two of them focused on Lin and stood there waiting quietly. Not long after, an airship came from a distance. The moment the airship landed, Zyja and others ran over. Why did Rin sleep here? And the surrounding scene, what kind of battle could cause such destruction? Zyja ran to Lin and looked around the surroundings with a puzzled expression. The protagonists around Zyja were also curious about the surrounding situation, but Lin was already lying on the ground and asleep. Then everyone's eyes focused on Hisoka and Illumi. Hisoka naturally knew what these people wanted to ask. Regarding Naolian's relationship with several people, Hisoka simply replied, it's nothing. I'm just tired of playing games. Then Hisoka took a deep look at Lin and said, you carry him onto the airship, and the little man in a suit over there will make arrangements. Ignoring everyone's doubtful glances, Hisoka raised his feet and walked towards the airship, followed closely by Illumi. Game? What game could cause such a scene? Kurapika lowered his head and pondered for a while. In his opinion, since he could create such a scene, it proved that Lin's assessment was not simple. Killua crossed his hands and held the back of his head, looking at the scene around him and saying, damn it! It's all the fault of that green-faced monster. Otherwise, I could have come over to take a look. Several people had different thoughts. Leorio on the side had already carried Lin on his back and reminded, let's get Lin settled first. I just checked him, but he was too tired and fell asleep. That's all. After everyone heard the words, they found the bean-faced man together. Under the arrangement of the bean-faced man, Lin was carried to a room by Leorio and settled there. Stepping off the airship again, the bean-faced man found Netero and said helplessly, President, if you want to completely restore this place, the association's funds will increase again. Netero said nonchalantly, these things are all trivial, but this game is so fun to play. President, did you get what you wanted? Seeing the president's happy face, the bean-faced man revealed his guess. Hey! Zaidu, this happiness is already my biggest gain from this trip. As for the rest. There was a hint of mystery in Netero's expression at this moment, and his words stopped abruptly. Really? As long as the president is happy, I hope you won't do such a willful thing next time. After all, the restoration of wetlands is really difficult. Waving to the bean-faced man, Netero walked towards the airship. Of course he knew that the restoration of the wetland was difficult. The Shimile wetland is inaccessible to ordinary people, so the cost of restoration will be ridiculously high, but this is completely within the scope of the Hunters Association. Moreover, Netero knew very well that compared to what he got in this game, this little money didn't matter to him at all. Ugh! Seeing Netero leaving, the bean-faced man sighed slightly and said to himself, what a troubled old naughty boy. Then the bean-faced man took out his phone and made a call. Of course, it was impossible for ordinary people to find this kind of thing. It was impossible for ordinary people to enter Shimile and get here safely. The call was made by Demianran to Zizwan. This was also Demianran's helpless move. Internal matters must be resolved internally. And if you find some professional hunters, you can't spend that kind of money through the association's channels. Moreover, the local government cannot wait for a long time and must restore the place quickly before the government can react. He was sure that once the associates came over, the scene here would turn into a photo and immediately appear on Periston's desk. However, the bean-faced man believed that his method of handling the matter must have been expected by Netero, and perhaps Netero was also expecting him to adopt this method. On the other side, Hisoka locked himself in the room when he returned to the airship. At this time, the room was dark. Hisoka curled up on the bed, his body trembling uncontrollably, and he pressed his face hard on the pillow, as if he was enduring something. While everyone was resting in the room, Netero, who returned to the airship, discovered something interesting and looked at the three people in front of him with interest. If Rin sees this scene, he will definitely recall the scene where Gon, Killua and Netero played volleyball. Chapter 102. It's just that Lin slept extremely deeply this time, and he definitely couldn't see the scene in the original work. After a night of silence, the skyboat came to an independent island the next day and landed on the top of a tall tower. As the airship landed, the candidates walked off one after another. Gon and Killua looked around and found no sign of Rin. Zyja said worriedly, "Lin hasn't woken up yet? The assessment is about to begin." "I don't know. That woman is taking care of Lin. She should wake him up, right?" Killua is a little unsure, after all, he is not familiar with Menkai. "Shh. Stop talking and start explaining the rules," Kurapika reminded. The bean-faced man walked up to the candidates and explained, "This is the top of the trap tower for the third test, and it is also the venue for the third test. The rules are very simple. As long as everyone can reach the ground alive, it will be considered a success. The time limit is 72 hours. The exam begins now. I wish you all good luck in martial arts." After saying this, the bean-faced man walked towards the airship. Obviously he had completed his mission. The candidates at the top of the trap tower looked at each other and dispersed in an instant. At this time, inside the airship Lin's room. Menkai stayed here all night. She sensed that the airship had landed, which proved that the third test was about to begin. But at this time, Lin was still breathing evenly, obviously still sleeping, and showing no signs of waking up. Menkai thought for a while and decided to call Lin first. It would be best if he could wake him up. If he couldn't, he would have to wait until next year's test. Moreover, Menkai had a glimmer of hope in his heart. Assuming that Lin missed the test and failed to obtain the hunter's license, Netero, who started the special test, would be more or less responsible. "Ryan! Wake up! The third test is about to take place." Menchi shook Lin, trying to wake him from his slumber. After trying for a few minutes, Menkai found that Lin showed no signs of waking up, and knew very well that Lin would probably not be able to participate in the third exam. Just when Menkai gave up, Lin's eyelids slowly opened. "Well, I heard it, I just slept too comfortably and didn't want to open my eyes." Rin shouted back, gritted his teeth and sat up from the bed. In fact, Lin didn't wake up after hearing Menkai's voice, but because of Menkai's shaking and the pain in his body. The moment he sat up, Lin clearly felt the pain all over his body, as if he had been struck by a hammer. Without any hesitation, Lin summoned Xiaobai. "Surge!" Xiaobai's voice sounded quite tired to Lin's ears, and it was obvious that he had not recovered from the last time's consumption. Lin said gently to Xiaobai, "Xiaobai, please help me treat it, and then you can sleep well for a while." "Surge!" Xiaobai gave a tired cry and immediately wrapped himself around Lin, his body emitting a gentle light. The moment he saw Xiaobai, Menkai's eyes sparkled with curiosity. When he saw Xiaobai starting treatment, he asked curiously, "Lin, is this your mind beast?" Lin, who was being treated by Xiaobai, nodded and said, "Well, Xiaobai is the mind beast I created. Unfortunately, he is very tired now, otherwise I would let him say hello to you." "It's okay, but I didn't expect you to have a mind beast." Menkai stared at Xiaobai, obviously very curious about Lin's mind beast. "It's nothing. If I hadn't been forced by the environment, I wouldn't have chosen the path of the mind beast. But now it seems that the original choice was not bad." With a chuckle, Lin looked a little emotional. "Surge!" After completing the treatment, Xiaobai left Lin, shouted, and returned to the prison without staying too much. After a brief movement, Lin felt that apart from being a little weak, the previous physical pain had completely disappeared. "Menkai, I'm going to take the assessment. Next. Hearing Lin's inquiry, Menkai smiled calmly and said, I also have other things to do. I was going to report my merits to the association. Unexpectedly, when I had just prepared most of the materials, the association informed me that I would be the examiner for the second level. Now of course I have to go back and continue. Then Menkai continued, but I can wait for a while. Originally, those things also have part of your credit, so I am going to write our two names on them. Of course, that's after you get your hunter's license. Facing Menkai's words, Lin waved his hands and said, actually, I don't need these, because I am the exclusive mind killer of the Hunter Association. What? The association's exclusive mind killer? Menkai was surprised by Lin's identity. She didn't expect that Lin didn't even have a hunter's license, but he was already considered a high-ranking member of the Hunter Association. After briefly calming down, Menchi joked, I didn't expect you to be so hidden and so powerful in combat. I didn't expect you to be able to eliminate thoughts. These things are a long story, and I will tell you about them when I have the opportunity in the future. But I have to take the test now. Suddenly, Lin seemed to have thought of something and said, that's right. This is for you. Rin took out a jar of snowflake honey from the storage room and handed it to Menkai. Menkai observed it for a while and asked doubtfully, this is it? Honey from snowflake bee. Facing the honey handed over by Lin, Menkai was a little confused and didn't understand what Lin meant. Lin explained, last time I told Boera that if I wanted to eat roasted pig, I would come to you. I think you might need it in the future. Then Lin explained the general method of roasting a whole pig. He believed that with Menkai's cooking skills, he could only learn how to do it once. After roughly jotting down the contents, Menkai already had a grasp in his mind, and as he continued to deduce it, he even improved it. Remember, I will wait for you in Saba City. You need to go with me when reporting. Menkai said and left the room. Lin was not surprised at all when Menkai left. Menkai was always the type to do things in a hurry. Moreover, Lin believed that Menkai knew very well that professional hunters, except for the sake of interest, were the type who had no profit and could not afford to be early. With this formula in hand, many things that Menkai found troublesome could be left to Boera. Lin, who was in the room, was not in a hurry to go out and gather, because he knew very well that he had 3 days to pass the trap tower in the 3rd level, so he had plenty of time. With a thought, Lin's figure disappeared into the room and entered the prison. Looking at the warden's room in front of him, Lin did not stop but came to the prison. He was going to investigate why the strengthening effect increased after the life essence exploded. Chapter 103. The moment Lin entered the prison, he was shocked by the sight in front of him. At this time, the essence of life was floating everywhere in the prison, and the thick essence condensed into a cloud-like cloud top on the top of the prison. Traces of pure white crystal powder fell from the clouds, turning into white light spots floating in the air. Seeing the magical scene in front of him, Lin stepped forward, picked up a white light spot and observed it carefully. Feeling the breath of life existing on the light spots, Lin guessed that these tiny crystals should be the polymer of life essence, which is the life essence that Xiaobai can purify from the body. Perhaps because there is too much life essence, these life essences automatically merge into life essence. Seeing this scene, Lin knew why the improvement increased so much when burst mode was turned on. The essence of life is the product of Xiaobai devouring and purifying the essence of life. Now Xiaobai estimates that what he swallowed is the essence of life, so after purification, it must be a higher level of life energy. Lin named Xiaobai's purified energy life crystal and made a classification. Level 1, Essence of Life. Level 2, Essence of Life. Level 3, Life Crystallization. Throwing aside the life essence exuding the breath of life in his hand, Lin continued walking towards the inside of the prison. Glancing at Xiaobai sleeping on the ground, Lin's attention was instantly attracted. At this time, Xiaobai's size has obviously increased a bit, and the life essence around him is rushing to get into his body. After observing Xiaobai's state of absorbing life essence for a while, Lin discovered that Xiaobai's rate of absorbing life essence was actually higher than the rate at which he absorbed life essence. Regarding the situation in front of him, Lin only knew that it was a good thing, but he didn't know whether it was related to the purity of life essence or because Xiaobai had grown up. Seeing Xiaobai's sleeping appearance, Lin knew that except for Xiaobai's forced sleep after the dragon pattern mode forcibly erases thoughts, Xiaobai can be awakened when he enters a deep sleep on his own. But Lin didn't do that. He had just experienced a high-intensity battle, and now was the time when Xiaobai needed a rest the most. Without disturbing Xiaobai who was sleeping, Lin walked towards the inside of the prison. Lin made an observation and found that, in addition to the 3 people detained at Sheidazuo at the beginning, the 3 people imprisoned from Pukin's prison were also in the same state, half dead and hanging on the prison. Continuing to patrol forward, Lin finally discovered the key to increasing life essence. It is the Warcraft clan that was imprisoned in the prison from Tommy Forest. In Lin's eyes, the energy emitted by these monsters is basically 2 to 3 times that of humans, and the amount emitted is very abundant, and it feels like it can last for a long time. Seeing this scene, Lin fully understood the overall reason for this incident. Because of the powerful vitality of the Warcraft clan, the prison's life essence changed from quantitative to qualitative changes, gradually forming the life essence. As a hell beast, Xiaobai would definitely not leave the higher level life essence undevourable and devour the lower level life essence. This led to an increase in the purity of energy in Xiaobai's body, and the burst mode became more powerful, almost catching Lin off guard. Thinking of this, Lin hurriedly called up the prison panel to see what changes the appearance of the essence of life would have on himself. In an instant, the panel information appeared in front of Lin. The moment he saw the information on the panel, Lin's eyes widened in disbelief. Warden, Ryan Purst. Age, 18 years old. Prison level, level 3. Prison skills, Eye of Judgment, Prison Controller, Infinite Body, Prison Marshal without pardon. Prison facilities, Warden's Room, Jail, Storage Room, Interrogation Room. Self-skill, Aerial Realm, Disabled. Lifespan, 150 years. Sin value, 2173 points. Next stage, Sin points. The moment he saw the panel, Lin's eyes were directly fixed on the lifespan column. Unexpectedly, the lifespan reached 150 years. You must know that Rin lost 5 years of his life last time because of time ants. His lifespan at that time was 77 years. Unexpectedly, after a trip to the Tommy Forest and the confinement of nearly 20 monsters, the lifespan was actually increased by 73 years, only 4 years away from doubling. After reading the lifespan, Lin's eyes appeared on the latest updated information on the panel. Lin had always believed that personal skills would not appear on the panel. After all, Lin thinks that his sword skills are not bad. Since he does not appear on the panel, it proves that the prison panel will not show the skills that he has mastered. After seeing the latest information on the panel, Lin overturned his previous opinion. The fact that it did not appear could only prove one problem, that is, the level of mastered skills was not enough, so the relevant information would not be displayed. Lin's eyes focused on the words "the realm of the sky," "remnant," and he knew nothing about this realm. Lin speculated that this skill was probably related to the strange realm he entered at the beginning, but now he racked his brains and couldn't recall the feeling at the beginning. Shaking his head, Lin pushed out many unrealistic thoughts from his mind and prepared to ask Netero for information about that strange realm. After all, with Netero's years of experience studying martial arts, Lin had enough reasons to be sure that Netero must know something. Just thinking about this gave Lin a headache. He knew that with Netero's style, it would not be easy to get something from Netero. What Lin was afraid of was not that Netero would rip him off, but that the other party would use some means to delay time, or ask some difficult questions and wait for the problems to be solved before answering. You must know that in 2 years at most, Netero will face the situation of dying together with the Ant King. If he smiles all the time, Lin doesn't know how many more detours he will have to make. Ugh! After sighing, Lin decided to test Netero's words first. After all, the conditions that the other party promised him had not yet been fulfilled. The most important thing is that Lin lost a request to Netero through this game, and he was sure that this request was definitely the starting point for Netero to launch this game. It's just that now Lin can only take one step at a time for these things, and he knows very well that there are some things that he absolutely cannot bet on Netero. After all, sometimes this old man is indeed unreliable. After secretly deciding to give up Netero as a last resort, Lin already had a backup plan in mind. He has not forgotten that in addition to being a disciple of Xinyuan Liu and exclusive master of Hunter Association, he also has the identity of beating the enemy Hakka guest minister. If you can't pass some conditions on your own, go directly to Maha. Beating up the enemy guest won't solve the problem. Chapter 104. After making up his mind, Lin left the prison, but what was different from when he came in was that he had more doubts when he came out. After opening the door, Lin walked out of the airship. After all, he was here to take the exam, so he couldn't give up midway, otherwise it might take a lot of time to take part next time. Not long after Lin walked out of the room, he met the bean-faced man who had just returned to the airship. Mr. Lin, it's great that you're awake. I thought you would miss this exam. The bean-faced man greeted Lin very politely and seemed to be concerned about Lin's condition. Seeing this, Lin asked, "Is the president still on the airship?" The bean-faced man replied, "The president has already left and asked me to call him after you wake up." After the bean-faced man finished speaking, he took out a note and pen from his pocket and started writing on the note. "Here, Mr. Lin, this is the president's phone number. In addition, the president has told me that you can get the prisoner's reward from the test officer Lieber of the third test. The president will use his own name and the name of the association as a guarantee, and you can exchange for some prisoners with telekinesis abilities." The bean-faced man's explanation was very clear, and Lin had great expectations for the sin points he was about to receive. "Thanks." After receiving Netaro's phone number from bean-faced man, Lin recorded it directly on his mobile phone, and then returned the note to bean-faced man. Seeing this, the bean-faced man smiled knowingly and explained the content of the third test to Lin. Listening to the rules explained by the bean-faced man, Lin compared it with the memory in his mind and found that there was no change. He nodded and walked towards the exit of the airship. After getting off the airship, Lin glanced at the sky and found that the weather today was particularly good, which was very suitable for sleeping with the breeze, but the current situation was obviously not suitable. Lin. Seeing Rin's figure appear, Gon immediately ran over, followed closely by Killua and others. "You guys are finally awake. Zyja and I were going to take a look after the exam, but the damn bean-faced man actually told us not to run around." Killua's tone was very angry, as if he regretted not seeing the curious sight. "It's great that you're okay. By the way, do you really need a hunter's license to learn that kind of power?" Compared to Killua and Gon, who were just curious, Kurapika obviously focused most of his attention on the power of destroying the scene. Lin smiled and said, "I was just too tired at the time. You will also experience battles of that level in the future. So the most important thing now is to get a hunter's license first." Everyone nodded, fully agreeing with what Lin said. At this time, Leorio came over and complained, "Damn it! There are no secret passages around. How did those people disappear?" "No. Leorio, Killua and I just discovered 4 secret doors." Gon replied. 4. Leorio counted them with his hands and said in despair, "But there are 5 of us, and 4 is simply not enough." Lin smiled and said, "You don't have to count me in, I have my own way. Lin, I can search again. There must be a secret door around." Zyja thought that Lin was going to search for him by himself, so he couldn't help but secretly worry about Lin. After all, they started a little late, and he wasn't sure if there were any extra secret doors left. Seeing Zyja's performance, Lin knew very well that these people would gather together the moment they entered the secret door, and Lin didn't really want to pass the level with Zyja and the others. After all, the growth of the protagonist group has a set trajectory and experience. His position should be a bystander, not a nanny. After organizing his language, Lin replied, "You can go first, I have other things to do, and this level is not difficult for me." After hearing Lin's very definite answer, Zyja and others no longer insisted. They stood in front of their respective secret doors, said hello to each other, and jumped down at the same time. Seeing that the protagonist group had already begun to enter the tower, Lin was not in a hurry and blew the breeze at the top of the tower for a while, then unfolded the circle. Through Yuan's perception, Lin walked to a stone slab, lifted it up, and a hole appeared in front of him. Without any hesitation, Lin jumped directly and slid down the slide in the passage, not knowing where the end point was. When Lin's feet landed on the ground, he looked up and saw several members of the protagonist group looking at him with surprised expressions. "What a coincidence! You guys, I didn't expect to meet again so soon." With a wry smile, Lin never expected that he had been delaying for a while, but he didn't expect that they would still meet. "Lin. We have been waiting here for a long time. There are requirements written on it. We must gather 5 people before we can move forward." Zyja's voice came, with a hint of surprise in it. Killua joked, "What a short separation. I didn't expect that we would be together again so soon. It should be said that this fate is really wonderful." After hearing Killua's words, several people laughed. Karapika threw the timer towards Rin and explained, bring the timer with you so that we can continue with the next test. Lin nodded, put on the timer, and asked, I haven't seen Dongba for a long time. How is he? Unexpectedly, he met the protagonist group again. Lin remembered the scene in the original work. At this time, Dongba should be the fifth talent. What are you doing with that guy, that despicable guy? Leorio said through gritted teeth. Rin didn't know why Leorio was so angry, and he was full of doubts. That guy from Dongba accidentally lost his spider egg during the second exam. After he came up, he tried to steal Gon's, but he was kicked off the cliff by Killua. He lost his qualification for the exam. Karapika was very careful. Wei Lin explained. Hearing this, Lin suddenly realized that he did not expect that the Dongba master would be eliminated in this way. This was something he had not expected. Glancing at the time on his watch, Lin knew that there were still 71 hours before the end of the exam. Suddenly, a radio sound came, attracting the attention of 5 people. I didn't expect you to gather 5 people so quickly, and one of them is a master among masters. You are really lucky. Who is it? Leorio became alert and shouted loudly. I am Lieber, the warden and examiner in charge of the third test. Let me explain the rules of this test to you. After Lieber's detailed explanation, several people present had a general understanding of the third exam. Chapter 105. To put it simply, while maintaining the goal of reaching the bottom of the trap tower, different levels will be given based on the choices of the 5 people. Winning a level will allow you to reach the bottom layer faster, while failing will result in a part of the time being deducted as a penalty. Then I wish you a smooth trip. And many more. Before Lieber finished speaking, he was interrupted by Lin. Ribber, I wonder when I can pick up the prisoners I need. Lin knew that Reber must have learned information about him from Netero, and he also knew that Reber was watching him in the monitoring room. Now was the best time for him to ask questions. Ha ha ha. Lieber's laughter was heard on the radio, and he replied, this matter is not urgent. You can complete the assessment first. Although it is not difficult for you. Let's not talk about the assessment for now. I hope to meet you after the assessment. Lin made it clear, and at the same time he was also waiting to see Reber's attitude. No problem. Lieber's voice fell silent after he answered. After talking to Reber, the passage to continue has been opened, and everyone only needs to follow the established path to the bottom of the trap tower. In the conversation he had just had with Reber, it seemed to Lin that the other party was obviously on Netero's side, and his attitude toward him remained friendly. Although he is not familiar with Reber, since he is from Netero's side, it means that Lin can accomplish some things through Reber. Of course there will definitely be a price to pay, but the future gains are nothing compared to the price paid. Lin thought about it in his mind and made a rough plan on how to obtain benefits through Reber. Several members of the protagonist group clearly saw that Lin was worried, and they were very sensible and did not disturb him. Are we going to face a choice now? Karapika pondered as he looked at the choice in front of him. O means open, X means not open, how do we choose? Zyja asked. Killua said indifferently, it doesn't matter which way you choose, it's all the same to me anyway. It goes without saying that you know how to choose when it comes to this kind of question. Leorio said with certainty. Everyone looked at each other, and Lin decisively chose O and opened the door. The 5 people made their choices at the same time, the screen in front of the door flickered, and all 5 people voted to open it. It seems we still have a good understanding. Killua said with a smile. Leorio replied, of course, we all came to take the assessment with the consciousness of risking our lives. Everyone continued to march, and the left and right sides in front were blocked by fences. Everyone knew that the time to make a choice had come without even looking. Choose left or right? Leorio read out the question of choice. This time, everyone remained silent and quickly made their choices on their watches. The electronic screen flickered, X1 on the left and X4 on the right. Choose the right side? It's obviously the right time to choose the left side at this moment, right? Leorio said in disbelief. Zyja said seriously, my intuition tells me to choose the left. I chose it randomly, but I didn't expect it to be the same as everyone else's choice. Killua said proudly. Leorio looked at Lin with an unknown meaning in his eyes. With an awkward smile, Lin slowly said, according to the law of the maze, you will generally choose the right side. This is related to the development direction of the human brain. Most people will subconsciously develop the right brain. So Leorio, it's very possible that you are a genius in developing the left side of your brain. Hearing this, Leorio said proudly, sure enough, I know that I am not an ordinary person. Killua and Kurapika, idiot. Lean, some people actually believe this kind of thing. Zyja, I didn't expect Leorio to be so powerful. Okay, Leorio, we have to leave as soon as possible. Kurapika was speechless when facing Leorio and pushed Leorio towards the passage on the right. Seeing this scene, Lean twitched the corner of his mouth and thought to himself, can't Leorio hear that, am I afraid of embarrassing him? Everyone walked along the passage and arrived at a checkpoint in a few minutes. Looking at the battle arena and the bottomless edges around it, Lean knew that this was the venue for the duel with the prisoners in the original work. Candidates, welcome here. As soon as Lieber finished speaking, 5 figures of different sizes wearing cloaks appeared in the passage opposite. The people in front of you are all prisoners of this trap tower, and they are also examiners officially employed by the review committee. Please use one-on-one fighting to win the game. Each person can only play once. There is no limit to the fighting method. There is no so-called tie. The only way to determine the winner is to admit defeat or die. Reber's voice came again, explaining the rules of this level in great detail. Since the other party is a criminal, there is definitely no possibility for the other party to hold back. It is best to admit defeat before the game starts. In just one sentence, Kurapika made the key points of this victory clear. I don't care. After all, killing is just a common occurrence for me. Killua's expression was very dull, and he didn't take the rules of this competition to heart at all. Lean knew very well about Killua's performance that it was directly related to the excellent family education of the Haka family. As Killua's hoped to defeat the enemy Haka in the future, Ilmi has fully demonstrated his role as a good big brother. He has taken Killua on various training and assassination missions since he was a child. Under such harsh conditions, for Killua, killing is as simple as eating and drinking. Many people who have heard of the reputation of the Haka who beat up their enemies know that this is a family that kills without batting an eye. But these people often forget that the people who can be assassinated by the enemy Haka are all high-ranking officials and dignitaries, and the blood of many innocent people may be stained on the hands of those people. The hunter world is so complicated. At the beginning of Lean's time travel, there was no other way to go except to become stronger. As for hiding and using the knowledge from his previous life to make a fortune, if he does that, I'm afraid he will be treated as a piece of fat meat by others before the day he gets rich, and no bones will be left after being devoured. Thinking of this, Lean couldn't help but shudder, secretly glad that he met Yungu and Bisji because of the gem incident. At this time, the radio voice came again, according to the contract with the prisoners, if you lose the competition, the prisoner's sentence will be reduced. For every hour that time is delayed, the prisoner's sentence will be reduced by 1 year. So, the assessment begins. As Lieber's words fell, there was an excited voice from the prisoner's side. Let me be the first one. I haven't seen blood for a long time.